let's get going. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this school board meeting of the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education. Today is December 5th, 2023. We do have a need for a closed executive session, and I'll entertain a motion from the board.
Okay. I move that the board on December 5th, 2023 go into closed executive session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Vice President Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sputt, yes.
All right, that motion passes. We will go ahead and move to another room to make sure that we have that time available for us. Thank you.
Safe?
Well,
I'm just in the room next door.
Okay.
You get your food and then. Okay, fine.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to thank you for letting us take the time we needed to convene our closed session. So today is December 5th, 2023. This is the Salt Lake City School District Board of Education meeting and also public hearing on the recommendations for school closure and boundary changes. I'd like to thank you. With that, I'd also like to recognize our association presidents. From the Buildings and Grounds Association, we have President Elia Ocampo. Child Nutrition, we have President Tanya Slaughter. From the Salt Lake Education Office Personnel Association, we have President Whitney Favre. For Transportation, we have President Chris Crow. The Salt Lake Education Association, President James Tobler and Vice President Mike Harmon. For our SLCSD, the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, we have President Bree De Leon. Thank you for all that you do and your commitment to our students, making sure they have the best environments possible. We'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Vice President Williams to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for participating in the pledge. Up next, we have the consent agenda, and we do have a request to pull item number 5 off the consent agenda and move it to the action agenda. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item number 5.
Move to approve the consent agenda excluding item number 5.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll start with a roll call vote with Board Member Sika.
Jenny Sika, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
That motion carries. Thank you very much, Board. Up next on our agenda is our request to speak. The Board has asked me to make sure that I read a statement regarding our rules governing our request to speak. The Board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our Board rules governing your comments. 1, the total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with all speakers or groups limited to 3 minutes. The Board will not allow public comments during Board meetings that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. 3, employees and/or their representatives may not use the public comment period to address issues that should be raised through existing formal communication channels or established grievance or negotiations procedures. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the Board from taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with the speaker on the topic discussed. I would also like to make it known that we do have a time certain start of our public hearing at 6:30, so I may ask the 5th speaker that has signed up to speak at a time later than the public hearing. I'm sorry to do that to that individual, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. First to speak is Nancy Hernandez. Nancy, are you with us this evening? Our next speaker on the list is Barbara Whitaker. Thank you, Barbara, for joining us.
Hello, my name is Barbara Whitaker, and I am an alum of West High School, class of 1979. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight about the future of this century-old building that is West High School. It was the first public school building of its kind in the state and is one of the last still standing, and it must be preserved and restored. I'm aware that the steering committee has fulfilled its required due diligence, having done studies of other campuses and met with the community on a few occasions. But what the architecture firm VCBO presented to the community was, I believe, disingenuous. Their preferred plan preserves only the entry of the building due to the cost of restoring the entire building. Their study did not include the cost of building a bridge across Highway 89. The steering committee later requested an increase for the budget, which was granted, but caused the preferred plan budget to surpass the cost of restoring the entire West High School building. VCBO also failed to inform the public that the preserved clock tower entry would become the new entry for the athletics department. I believe there is a conflict of interest with one or more of the members of the steering committee, which make it impossible for VCBO to be objective when they were making their proposal. This Board of Education does not own the property. It was paid for with tax dollars, and it belongs to the public. You're the stewards of this property, and you have the power to make decisions concerning it. You will not always sit on this board, but the decisions that you make on this board will be lasting, and you need to own that. So every time I think about the very idea of demolishing this building, I have to think about what happened to Penn Station in New York City in 1963. Please don't make the same mistake that they did. The beautiful structure was built around the same time as West High School, was demolished to make space for Madison Square Garden, and 60 years later, they still lament the loss of Penn Station. The decisions you make now matter. They will be you will either be seen as a board that had insight and recognition of the importance of this historic building and restored it, or you will be the board that bungled it and destroyed a piece of our heritage that has been a part of our landscape for more than a century. No one has filed an application to register the building with the Utah Historic Preservation Society or the Office of National Historic Preservation, so I'm formally asking you to do this immediately. I'm asking you to register the building with the Office of National Historic Preservation so that you can access funds for upkeep and restoration. And I'm asking you also to conduct a new feasibility study that's not tainted by a steering committee with conflict of interest and bias on the outcome. And this should include parking, a swimming pool, possibly extending the campus across 2nd North Street, possibly considering a solar farm on the rooftop or a garden rooftop to offset the carbon footprint.
That's time, ma'am. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would also like to note that Board Member Bate is joining us remotely as he is unable to be here due to some health reasons. Up next to speak is Vice Chair of the Salt Lake City Council, Victoria Petro. Thanks for joining us, Victoria.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I speak to you primarily as the mother of 2 children who go to Mary W. Jackson and 1 graduated alum. But I am a member of the Salt Lake City Council representing the West Side, and I am a diversity and inclusion professional. Thank you to the superintendent and her team for the work that you did. I do not make light of the responsibility you had forced upon you so early in your tenure. I'm asking you, board, to vote down the recommendations. The framework presented was faulty, and the future outcomes related to closing Mary W. Jackson are not in the best interest of our students. First, the decreasing number of students is not the reason for closing Mary W. Jackson. Our current population is sufficient to justify our continued operation. Keeping Mary W. Jackson open would ensure the growing area around it continues being an activity hub for our young people and their families. It's woefully short-sighted to decentralize their academic and social experiences. Which brings us to the issue of the neglected building. It's needed attention since before I began working there as a nonprofit community partner when I was pregnant with my now 3rd grader. Since then, it has become clear that no amount of outstanding performance will earn us the right to an updated facility. We were a source of pride for our after-school youth orchestra program. We renamed the school, still the only one in the district and the state, as far as I know, named for a Black woman. We were awarded the Apple Grant, bringing national attention and technology to the students without burdening the district. And all of this, and we still have no facility improvement. Our strategically multicultural and nourishing community has helped families who speak no English find their American dream. I've never once witnessed condescension or saviorism, and I've had my faith in that precarious American dream restored, all in a facility that has been neglected. Equity and accessibility are realities we must pursue together, realities that have been repeatedly denied despite our community's ability to rally and overcome repeatedly being sidelined. You, board, you have the chance to stand at the crossroads and to stop that trend. Equity doesn't fit nicely into facilities management plans. Instead, equity requires our sacrificial creativity to make the difficult choice to correct the decisions we've inherited. By choosing to invest in and save Mary W. Jackson, you, the board, can change the trajectory of these historical inequities. You can protect the families that live closest to the building who need us the most, who will not be able to cross 600 North and 1000 North to preserve their access to dual language immersion. You can preserve the access to the food that is distributed there multiple times a week. You can ensure families get their students when they are sick and need to go home and busing might not comprehend that. You can ensure access to parent-teacher nights by eliminating transportation burdens and eliminate the myth that brown families don't show up. Please see that this plan is short-sighted. I want to partner with you. We own our part and we're fixing it. Please don't make the mistakes we've made before.
Next to speak is Councilmember Sarah Young.
Good evening, members of the Salt Lake City School Board. I want to express my appreciation for providing this opportunity for public input regarding the potential school closures. My name is Sarah Young, and I serve as a councilwoman for Salt Lake City District 7. I'm here tonight, though, primarily as a parent with a child within the district. Dr. Grant's acknowledgement of the challenges tied to school closures resonated with me. Our schools are more than just buildings. They're the heartbeat of our community. I believe that any school closure can have a profound impact on the students, parents, and teachers. My main point tonight is to urge the Salt Lake City School Board and district staff to take proactive steps in mitigating the potential trauma associated with these closures. I'm asking for on-site and personalized support to guide our students and families through these transitions. It's crucial that there's clarity about the options available for the upcoming school year. The educational jargon like open enrollment that we use can be a barrier to our families. And I'd like to see the district commit to hosting on-site help sessions, Zoom meetings, and offering individualized support to help families understand and navigate the available choices as part of the robust communication plan that is referenced on the website. I've seen Salt Lake City School District go the extra mile for our families, particularly during the pandemic. From ensuring students had access to meals to providing technology for continued learning, the district has demonstrated a commitment to our community. While I understand that what I'm asking for may require additional time and effort from an already hardworking staff, I believe this investment is necessary to assist our families in navigating these changes and making clear plans for the future of the children. As one united community, I appreciate your consideration of this request. Let's ensure our parents understand their options and know how to pursue the best path for their students, moving forward together as a stronger and more resilient education community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Council Member. And thank you both for joining us and taking the time out of your busy council schedule this evening. Our final speaker in the request to speak portion is Amy and Emma Fink. I'm assuming there's two of you?
My name is Emma Finca. I am in kindergarten at Hawthorne. Is Hawthorne really closing? I don't want Hawthorne to close. I love my mom working at my school. I love my teachers. Please don't close Hawthorne. From Emma.
Thank you so much, Emma, for coming and speaking to us as a board. It really means a lot to us. Let's give Emma another round of applause. we will go ahead and take a brief couple of minutes, so we are certain to start right at 6:30 for our open public hearing. Thank you. Thanks for your help tonight. All right, and folks, if you haven't had the chance to sign up to speak yet, there is a table in the middle of the auditorium. You can sign up there, and April will help you to get signed up. Thank you.
Brian, if you could just position your body.
Yes, I know. She was asked that so that I could all the heat.
I feel like you could get it so like it's your shoulder or something.
Not to hog all the chocolate.
What was that? Oh, yes. Jenny, you better pass on those. Christy needs chocolate. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:30. We are going to go ahead and start our open public hearing. I do have something that the board would like me to read regarding our public hearing and our rules associated with it. Thank you for coming this evening to address the board in our public hearing. I want to remind everyone again that if you would like to speak tonight, you need to sign up at the table that is in the middle of the auditorium. The public hearing is for the sole purpose of commenting on the boundary adjustments and school closures that are being proposed. By way of reminder, we have 14 elementary school boundaries that are being proposed for adjustment, and 4 elementary schools that are being proposed for closure, specifically Hawthorne Elementary, Mary W. Jackson, Emlyn Benyon Elementary, and Riley Elementary. This is a very important topic that is personal to many of us here, but I would like to urge everyone to be civil and respectful in their comments. As always, the board will not allow public comments that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. All speakers will have 2 minutes to address the board, and we will start the timer when you begin speaking. The first person signed up is Zoe Budnick. And the second speaker will be Nora Budnick.
Hello, I am Zoe Budnick. I am in 5th grade gifted and talented program at Hawthorne Elementary. I want to tell you some reasons why Hawthorne shouldn't close. First, many kids would have to ride a really long bus ride to get home or to school. But right now, some can walk home easily. Next, not all my friends would go to the school I would attend to. This would be sad and disappointing to a lot of kids at other schools too. Third, it'd be hard to switch schools for a lot of people and their families. Lastly, Hawthorne is in the top 10 schools in the district, and in 2018 got a Blue Ribbon Award. Please don't close Hawthorne. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Zoe. Nora Budnick.
Hi, I'm Noah Bunn. I am in 4th grade. I go to Hawthorne Elementary. I don't want you to close my school. Here are some reasons. One reason is I want to be able to walk home, and I wouldn't be able to walk home from the school I would be sent to. Next, I want to stay with my teachers. I want to stay with my teachers because they're really nice and I love them. Third, I want to stay with my friends, and if I move, they might not all come. This is why I don't want you to close my school ever. Don't close Hawthorne. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nora. Jenny McCoskey.
I did not put my children up to come and speak to you. They wanted to do this themselves. So I know that this is really difficult for many, many families, and I just want to put some words out there that really consider what elementary school parents have to factor into when they're trying to pick what school to go to. This is especially with your special programs. So parents are trying to juggle working schedules, they're trying to juggle childcare, they're trying to juggle transportation, and sometimes it feels like the people haven't really fully understood what goes into factoring of how you can get a kid to school. This is partly from comments like saying you have a UTA bus pass. How many kindergartners to third graders can get on a UTA bus by themselves? So please, as you consider where you're placing things and you're making changes, really consider the ideas and the things that parents have to factor in that actually makes the school workable for their families. Because it's not just simply the building, it's actually all of the community and the transportation options that get them there. Thanks.
Thank you. Next we have Chris Porter, followed by Dixie Euler.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. The SEC chair for Mary W. Jackson, and we are a very underrepresented community when it comes to public public events, and we're currently in this position right now of looking at these schools because 20 years ago the school board decided not to close any schools whatsoever, and so we have more schools now than what is needed. I agree with what Brian Conley and his team has said, that, we definitely need to make some adjustments. And while I also agree that Mary W. Jackson should probably stay open emotionally, when you look at the numbers and everything else, some schools need to close, and if you don't close them now, what are we going to do next year or the year after? But I think there's going to be some problems with the issues that are going on right now. One of them, if you do close, school busing, you're adding more bus routes to allow schools to keep the dual immersion program going for Mary W. Jackson. And with that, last year we had issues with the school buses the first week of the school year to where we didn't have enough bus drivers, or bus routes were so long that kids were coming home late. 6, 7 o'clock at night. So we need to be considerate of that and making sure that we have everything thought out and we have the proper staffing to cover whatever is needed so that these elementary school students are not left on the side of the road or, 3 hours on a bus getting home. I also believe that by changing the boundaries, one of the things that's going to increase is school bullying, and the adjustment of where students are going outside of their normal boundaries right now, you're going to see an increase in students being treated unfairly and not feeling welcomed at their new schools. And that's all 14 schools that are impacted with the boundary changes. So I hope you consider that in your adjustments and making sure that on a district level that we're looking at the best interest for the students that are being impacted. And it's not just the 4 schools that are under the proposal.
Thank you. Next, we have Dixie Euler, followed by Natalia Costanzo.
Hi. I'm the mother of a 9-year-old granddaughter who attends Hawthorne, and this is her third year. She's in 4th grade, and it has just changed her life. She's received so much love and support. She's on the spectrum, and she is receiving special services, and she has just felt so supported by all of the people involved in helping her, and she's grown so much. And we as her family have just loved the teachers at Hawthorne. Hawthorne is just special. It has a beautiful energy that is so welcoming and non-judgmental, and I worked as a substitute for many years, and I could just feel the energy when I entered some of the junior high schools that I taught at. And every time I enter Hawthorne, I feel the peace and tranquility and love and support. It's just amazing. I haven't even been able to tell my granddaughter about this because I'm so afraid of the trauma that she will experience. She's so tied to this school, as many are. When I drop her off and pick her up in the mornings and I see all the parents from all over walking their kids, I just wonder, do you realize that there are so many lives that are going to be changed if you close Hawthorne? We are just such a tight-knit community. We are so close. We love each other. We love the teachers. We love the staff there. I just can't imagine it not being there. I'm just begging you to please don't close it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dixie. I'd like to just give a reminder to folks who've joined us. Since I made this announcement previously, if you would like to speak, there is a table in the middle of the auditorium where you can type your name or somebody will help you with that. Natalia Costanzo.
As a former student of Hawthorne, I would like to state some reasons why I and others like my friends here today, First, we have extra classrooms for students from other schools to come to, as well as the behavioral and disability program. Second, our building is newer and will last longer for future students and staff. This is because our building was rebuilt in 1988. Third, we have an updated ventilation system that was installed during COVID. That means the quality of air is better and purified. Fourth, our test scores are high and we are top 5 in the state. Fifth, we are a blue ribbon school and were recognized in 2018. Sixth, we are trying to improve our environment by planting trees and composting. Seventh, fantastic teachers will lose their jobs due to the other programs already established in other schools. Finally, eighth, students will be separated because of the boundary movement, and considering that most kids have known each other since kindergarten, this can be a very big change for younger kids or even 5th graders last year of elementary. Just losing connection to some may not seem like a big deal, but to those kids it may be scary and overwhelming. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Josh Stewart, followed by Nicholas Scow. Sorry, Nick. Either one works.
Good evening. In a rapidly growing state and city, Salt Lake City's added thousands of new units in the last few years. And the closing of 4 more Salt Lake elementary schools shows a failure by leadership statewide. And, it's, the board has to play lobbyist with the governor, with the state legislature, with city councils. So we have child-friendly city. So that's the role of that the school board has to advocate in order, because we're adding thousands of units, but yet we're not bringing children to the city. So it's an unfriendly city for children. So it gets a big F as far as report cards go. We need leaders to speak up and enable the work to be done to bring children back to Salt Lake City. The governor and the legislature, they can stop subsidizing highways and encouraging people to move out of the city. They can move that money away from highways, and they can bring that money and invest it in legacy communities where we've had children and families for decades, and put that money back into these communities, provide housing that is child-friendly, have improved the roads so they're child-friendly. You look at 7th East where Hawthorne is, that road could be transformed overnight. It could go to two lanes, and thousands of people would be benefited in Salt Lake City boundaries instead of being a traffic sewer for people that are outside the school district. So it's important that the board networks with the legislature, with the governor, and all of those people have to work together to make Salt Lake child-friendly housing, child-friendly streets, and child-friendly parks. So it's all interconnected, and I would encourage you to continue to advocate for children and child-friendly city. Thank you.
Nick, I'm sorry I mispronounced your name.
President Salazar, you have gotten it correct twice, SCOW, and it's literally unprecedented in all the commenting I've ever done.
I take it back.
Props to you.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your service on the Salt Lake School District Board. The board provides important oversight of the district and represents the students, parents, and individual school communities when important decisions are being made. Since my family became part of the Hawthorne Elementary community over 5 years ago, our district has been through a lot together. A pandemic, an earthquake, and now this school closure process. The district and the board have had to make some tough and consequential decisions during that time, many of which we've supported. But a vote by the board to approve the district's school closure recommendations would not be in the best interest of students and would be an abdication of the board's duty as an oversight body for the district. At the last board meeting, the district claimed that their recommendations followed data and public feedback. This statement is astonishing when one considers the overwhelming criticism of the district's data justifying their key assumptions, both at meetings and in the papers, not to mention the shocking lack of transparency throughout the process. But it's also insulting to every parent who's been involved in this process, dug into the data, attended the meetings and asked informed questions that still haven't been answered, not to mention the insult to the many students that this will impact. At previous meetings and in submitted comments, I've remained objective and have focused on data-supported decision-making and the importance of a transparent process. But at the last board meeting, it became abundantly clear that data and transparency are not important to the district. Their disingenuous and misleading statements clearly demonstrated they have no fear of accountability, not to parents and not to the board. While this botched process has caused our family to lose trust that we had for the district, we still hope that the board, who represents us, will exercise their oversight and reject the district's hubris. If we need to close schools, the board should require the district to start over and begin a truly deliberate, data-supported and transparent process with abundant oversight. There is too much at stake for the students,
Nick,
our families, and the communities that have been built around them. Thank you.
Up next, we have Michelle Cloud, followed by Sarah Wickstrom.
Hi, I'm Michelle Cloud, and this is my son, Jax.
He goes to Hawthorne and is in the 4th grade. And I just really want to echo, we really appreciate your service and just know that this is a really tough decision, and we just really value that you are looking out for the best education choices for our children. But just wanted to share our story, which I know could be similar to others. But Jax was in kindergarten when COVID hit, and so he's had to learn how to make friends with a mask on and sitting six feet apart from people in his classroom. We lived in Texas at that time. And he would come home and several times a week be crying that he doesn't know, he doesn't have friends, and, he sits alone on the playground. And so it was just tough. It's been, these kids, when they're, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, have already been through just a lot in life already, right? So we moved here a year and a half ago, and it was a pretty tumultuous home life situation that took us from Texas and brought us here. So there was some trauma involved in that. And then once again, Jax was thrown in to make friends and to navigate that. And, as you're making friends when you're the new kid, there's some rejection that you face, as you go through that. But really, the community at Hawthorne has been a lifesaver, not only for Jax, but really for me. Like, I knew no one here, and just, And so, COVID has already put our kids at just developmental and emotional disadvantage. Educational disadvantage. We still struggle with handwriting because handwriting should have gone in, anyways, that's the rabbit trail, sorry. But to overcome that just once more, especially after just all these traumas, that have added up, we understand you have to make the really hard decision to close schools. So, of course, we're praying and hoping that Hawthorne is not the one you close.
That's time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sarah Wickstrom, followed by Deborah Gordon.
Hello, my name's Sarah Wickstrom. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight as a representative of the Hawthorne Magnet ELP Steering Committee. In the last 2 weeks, our steering committee has met with our parent community and completed an informal survey in an effort to gather data about the concerns within our community and to advocate for our program. Here are some takeaways from our parent meeting and survey. Roughly 28% of the families that responded to our survey are currently undecided, and another 10% are planning on transferring schools. Multiple families are concerned about the accessibility of Indian Hills and transportation to Indian Hills. Multiple families are also concerned about a lack of aftercare options at Indian Hills, which may ultimately make it so that their children are unable to continue in the magnet program. Specifically, some aftercare options currently available at Hawthorne do not pick up at Indian Hills. Families are concerned about what busing will look like, who will ultimately qualify for busing. The district website indicates that families outside of a 1.5-mile radius will be bused to the new location. However, what about those families who live within 1.5 miles of a magnet school, but whose children who would be expected to cross Foothill Boulevard, 7th East, or other busy thoroughfares? Will busing be provided to these students? Furthermore, what will happen with younger students after this 3-year busing guarantee expires? When we took a deeper look at our survey responses, we found that a larger percentage of our lower grades compared to upper grades are uncertain about moving and indicating that they may wish to transfer. We don't know if this is because of the limited busing, where these families live, or maybe because they're not as integrated into the program. Our parent community remains concerned about the prospect of uprooting our beloved magnet program and troubled about the uncertainty about how we can actually move. I hope you take our concerns into consideration into your plans for the future of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Deborah Gordon, followed by Star Smith.
Hello. So I'm going to read something because I get really nervous, but my son is in 3rd grade at Hawthorne. He did kindergarten on a computer with a teacher in front of him, and then when he finally did go to school, he was wearing a mask and he had dividers between him. So that was his first year of school. Last year, his program, the CNA program, was removed from Hawthorne Elementary. He was in that program his first and second year, and his not third grade year. They got rid of it. So now he's had 2 changes. So now we've been talking at home about Hawthorne closing, and he says to me, "Mom, I'm going to lose all my friends because my best friend lives across 7th East." And I said, "Well, we'll try to keep these relationships going." And he said, "No, I never see Alex or some of my other friends because they all left the school when they closed the CNA program." So he's aware and he's concerned. So now I'll read what I've written here. The students who will be affected by the closure spent 2 years in quarantine. That program, the 700 East boundary cuts our school in half. Using 700 East seems like a weak argument for closing the school, only because Hawthorne is newer than the school we were pitted against, which we didn't want to be. Emerson is older. We also have windows in all of our rooms, and we have classrooms to fit the special program that is at Emerson. We feel like we could take them into our school and love them. Myself and others are wondering why you've picked Hawthorne. We're just a little concerned about another giant apartment building with more roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Star Smith, followed by Jen Oscarson. And I'll take this moment just to remind folks, if you haven't had the chance to sign up and speak, if you are here to speak, there's a table in the middle of the auditorium where you can sign up.
Sorry. Okay, so I have 2 students at Hawthorne. I have a 3rd grader and a 1st grader. And when I first moved on my street, there was like 2 kids, and now there's probably 25 just on my street. And a lot of the people in the neighborhood, they're older, and you know, when they pass on, it's usually a younger family that buys the home. And then, sorry, I don't know. Anyway, we're basically wondering if we can have preferential treatment for the open enrollment if you do close Hawthorne, so that we're very worried about destroying our community that we built and separating friendships that have been made with that 7th East boundary dividers. Yeah, sorry, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Star. Jen Oscarson, followed by Jen Weeks.
Okay, hello all. Thank you guys for keeping Wasatch open and off the recommended list. But now that we've done that research and review of the Central City, we hope we'll stay off that list and lessons will be learned. Investment has not been equal in our part of the district. Our oldest and least maintained schools have been identified. It's time to stop this unequal funding. Indian Hills has over $1.6 million budgeted in capital expenditures for the next 5 years. Wasatch has $168,000. I'm excited to see that Bryant has a capital budget of $1.6 million. However, after being at the other middle schools in this district, I would hope the sustainability plan and capital improvements are enough to encourage our neighborhood kids to stay in the neighborhood. I would also hope phase 1 is never repeated again. And I would just start with phase 2. Give us the options, give us the thorough, give us the data. As for the ELP programs, it sounds wonderful. I'm really excited the West Side is getting a program. I'm not understanding why Indian Hills is getting a program. They couldn't even get on the list for a study of closure because of students crossing Foothill. Now you're asking these students to cross Foothill to get there. It just isn't making sense. None of it makes sense on that end. And please remember, neighborhood schools are essential for growth, sustainability, and livelihood and urban living. We need to work better as a district and community to ensure every child has a quality education. And I implore you to work with the Olympics and the infrastructure, build walking bridges, do what you need to do, make us a sustainable, friendly, walkable community. You guys can do that.
Jen Weeks, followed by Kat Anthony.
Hi, I have two kids that are in the Salt Lake District, one at Wasatch and one at Bryant, and I just wanted to come up and tell my story. A little history. I want to thank you guys for keeping Wasatch and Emerson open. My daughter started out in school in Taylorsville, and they kept telling me that they were having problems with her writing and her reading and her education, but they weren't giving me the resources. And when we moved to Wasatch in third grade, they were able to do testing, and they transferred her to Emerson and basically gave her all the resources that she needed, and she is now back in Bryant and not in any special program anymore. So I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you guys for keeping them open.
Thank you, Jen. Kat Anthony, followed by Julia Kamenetsky.
Hello, my name is Kat Anthony, and I'm a fifth grader at Hawthorne, and I'm going to be talking about why Hawthorne should not close. First, we have a dance program with an amazing dance teacher, Miss Corinne, and we do performances. I don't know many other elementary schools that are able to do dance. Next, we are a Blue Ribbon School since 2018, and several teachers have won awards. Being a Blue Ribbon School is an incredibly hard thing to achieve. Then the award-winning Olympic medalist Nathan Shem went to our school. He has visited the school and still stays in contact with his teachers at Hawthorne. We were on the national news about how amazing Hawthorne is. Next year, we have a huge program with a bench dedicated to a teacher who passed away. And we also have a time capsule since COVID. We also had several trees planted in the field last year. Each class helped plant the trees. Then we have a bunch of artwork in the halls that is done by students. Our art program is strong. We have also have been working with Mad Dog Art to have a large painting installed featuring our artwork. Last, we have amazing staff that keeps our school running. Our cafeteria is kept in great shape and receives gold stars in health practices. Our custodians work hard to keep the school nice. Our co-op school has been here since 1986 and works wonderful for its age. If you decide to close Hawthorne, think about these things first and how devastated the kids will be.
Thank you, Kat. Julia Kamenetsky, followed by Alondra Morales.
Good evening. My name is Julia Kamenetsky, and I'm a parent at Hawthorne Elementary School. When I watched the August 1st board meeting, I was dismayed to see members of the board criticizing the lack of transparency in the initial study, and then all but one voting to continue the study anyway. Since then, local journalists, community members have exposed many flaws in the initial selection process. Key data sets were absent, and the existing data sets didn't justify the decisions made. But the plan was to study more schools for closure, and so the plan continued. Watching this happen seemed like a study in the cognitive phenomenon of planned continuation bias. Commonly talked about in aviation safety, it's when the singular goal of getting to the destination clouds a pilot's ability to accurately assess new conditions and hazards along the way. The closer you get to the goal, the harder it is to recognize that a diversion to an alternative route would be a success, not a failure. In this case, the alternate route would be to conduct a non-rushed process using all the things that we've learned in the past few months, with clear criteria established ahead of time, not after the fact. I hesitated to make this public comment for two reasons. First, some good things did come out of the November 20th recommendations, such as increased access to special programs and an emphasis on pedestrian safety. However, those things do not need to be tied to a flawed process to be accomplished. And my concerns about pedestrian safety in Salt Lake City are not limited to the largest thoroughfares. Second, doing the process over may just be delaying the inevitable for my family and for other families. But if your decisions will upend the lives of hundreds of families in our district, we expect that you will only vote for closure decisions that have been well justified and backed up by a process that you believe in. School board members, you are flying this plane. I understand that one of your roles is to be a good steward of taxpayer money. If the only goal is to close some schools, you can rubber stamp the recommendations, but that's not strong leadership. If the goal is to be a publicly elected check on the district to ensure that it makes closure decisions based on a fair and transparent process, please change course. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Up next, we have Alondra Morales, and followed by Sher Aga Nasser Mohammed.
Hi everyone, my name is Alondra Morales. I'm a community organizer from the West Side neighborhood, and I'm advocating for the West Side public schools to be open, who primarily serve working class families of color. The closure of the elementary schools will result in the loss of many social services and resources for families, students, and community members. These schools have established strong connection with communities they serve. I would like to draw my attention to Mary W. Jackson, which has a range of programs catering to elementary age student children, including dual immersion classes, reading and literacy programs, and college readiness programs like the Adelante program. They offer programs for high school students, such as Mestizos Arts and Activism, which provides resources for higher education opportunities and works in partnership with the community members, such as creating art and murals, and promotes culture, representation, and unity in the neighborhoods, which I have been a part of in my high school years. Closing the schools from the West Side will force families to cross dangerous streets beyond where they live. Many of the students who attend these schools are children who walk to school by themselves, and the Salt Lake City District will endanger our students' safety. Many of these schools, such as Riley and Mary W. Jackson, are at close proximity of child services, such as the Boys and Girls Club and Youth City. And many of these families in these schools are working class parents. This decision will affect them severely. The closing of the school is not the best decision. The state of the Utah legislature and the governors of Utah have spent billions of dollars over decades encouraging families to leave Salt Lake City. A number of families are being displaced from their homes, and as an active community organizer, I urge the school board to work to advocate for child-friendly cities instead of closing these important and integral resources for families and communities in Salt Lake City District.
Thank you. Sher Aga Nazar Mohammed, followed by Claudia Jorgensen.
Hi, good evening. No English, my Farsi or Persian. I'm sorry. من از مدرسه میری جکسون خیلی تشکری میکنم و خیلی خیلی ممنون هستم و ازشان تقاضا میکنم که در مورد بزرگسال‌ها هم بذارند یک کورس انگلیسی را که ما یاد بگیریم، چون من 1 سال شده آمده هم و 1-2 سال زمان میبرد تا من بتوانم بفهمم یا یاد بگیرم. اگر این کار را بکند خیلی ممنون میشم. تشکر.
Thank you, Cher. We'll make sure to have your comments translated for the public record. Claudia Jorgensen, followed by Bryce Jolly.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a neuroscientist. I actually teach neuroscience, and so I wanted to focus tonight very briefly on the ELP DLI program, which you're considering phasing out. And so I wrote something. I love teaching, but I don't do public speaking like this, so I'm just going to read. Equity, you nailed it by suggesting to offer DLI programs across the valley, which also will serve more of the Latinx Hispanic community. You nailed it by suggesting to do global ELP testing, which will hopefully catch more of the gifted children than scheduled testing could ever do. Sadly, you also utterly failed it by suggesting to phase out the ELP DLI program. From a brain development standpoint, all children should be given the opportunity to learn a second language. Neuroscientists speaking here, learning a second language increases gray matter. That's the part of the brain housing your neurons, as well as increasing the thickness of the corpus callosum. That's the part of the brain that connects the two hemispheres. By removing the ELP-DLI program, you will force parents to have to choose between DLI and ELP. That is not equity. First of all children benefit from DLI, including ELP qualifying students. But now parents will have to choose DLI or ELP. Why is that not equitable? Well, think about it. The kiddos that need to be in a DLI program, because otherwise they would fall behind because Spanish is their first language, they will never have the opportunity to be in an ELP program because you have removed that option of having an ELP DLI program. Also, think about the asset that these stellar teachers in the ELP-DLI program represent. With the removal of the program, we show them that they're not valued. For them, switching to just DLI might also just mean changing the job from what they love, what they have been specially hired and trained for, to a job that is utterly different from what they were hired. And then I know I'm out of time, but how can we address this, right? Allow time for the new ELP global testing, okay, to essentially allow to see if the presence of the DLI that is there to have more students merge over, right? Because the numbers were presented and said, oh, we don't have enough people in the program. But that was because we didn't have the option of people merging back into the program. Now there should be testing at third grade. Students will have DLI in their background. They could merge back into the ELP-DLI program. Sorry that I took much more of your time, but this is a very, very important issue. Think about the brains. This is our future generation that we're talking about. Thank you very much.
Bryce Jolly, followed by Britta Manzo.
I hope you read my long-winded letter I sent, but the 2 minutes I have, I trust that each and every one of you are on this board. Because you care just as much for our children as we do. And I think some things are being extremely overlooked. There's a laundry list everyone's gone over. There's been great articles by the Tribune, and I hope each and every one of you start asking more questions, putting a halt to some of these decisions, because it's clear the data and the studies have not been effective in a broad way, and there's many things to still be looked at. I hope you halt your decision. I hope, especially with my children at Hawthorne Elementary School, in a community, and I think something is going to be overlooked in what Star Smith was saying. A community that has a lot of single-family home residential walkable areas to Hawthorne being closed does not make any sense economically, and as well for the success of this district. You have a school that is ranked top 1% in the nation you're about to close. If you want a successful district that's successful in the community with your education system, you're going to promote that. You're going to expound upon that. And it does not make a clear decision to me that you are if you make the decision to close that school. And I hope you look further into the data that these communities, as older people are leaving, families are coming in, and we're going to become less attractive as a city and families if we make the wrong decision here. Thank you.
Britta Manzo, followed by Julia Lyon.
Hi there, thank you for having us. So, Britta Manzo, I bought my house in 2011. I specifically purchased it south of Liberty Park to not be in Whittier boundaries, which is where we would be putting our home. I purchased it there with the express interest in having a school that was walkable and actually one that split 7th. So it created a community that was pretty diverse and really a great place to be. My oldest daughter graduated from there and is at Highland, and I have a second that's in 5th grade. So for me, this might not last all that long, right, because she's in 5th grade, but it will have long-term consequences for our neighborhood. Some of my neighbors are here who moved in after us. So when we moved in, we were one of 2 families on the block that had kids of this age. It's 7 now. So I don't believe that you're capturing the right data when you're saying that our population is going to go down as far as kids in our specific neighborhood. And I think there's some things that you're missing in your data. So we've talked about that before. But I would love to have that same criteria that was displayed and we could see applied to all of the schools, including those, criteria that were so important in the decision to choose Hawthorne over Emerson. So one of those was the hub, it seemed. So if that really was, that should have been applied at the beginning and not the end. As far as Emerson, I'm an accountant. I have some background in that. I realize some schools will need to close. Emerson is not a long-term solution. It only has 15 years remaining useful life, and I can tell you with 16 classrooms without windows, if you try to upgrade that building, you will not be able to meet code. So what you will be doing is tearing down that building and rebuilding. Liberty cost you almost $17 million. Costs have doubled. So you are cementing in a choice that is not long-term when you're choosing Emerson over Hawthorne.
Julia Lyon, followed by Paula Novak.
Good evening. As Secretary of the Wasatch PTA, I want to thank Superintendent Grant for recommending that Wasatch Elementary stay open. We look forward to the opportunity to grow our community by welcoming more students and families to Wasatch. We believe our unique arts integrated school creates an exceptionally inclusive community. How? All our students receive instruction in dance, drama, music, and visual arts from kindergarten on up. They learn to be collaborative, creative, and confident through the arts and are incredible arts specialists, performing a class dance piece based on a theme or story in front of the entire school every year, performing a class play, often based on a book, in front of the entire school every year, sharing their extensive portfolio in an art showcase each spring. We are so proud of our 2023 National Blue Ribbon, and we're thrilled to be recently recognized as an exemplary school by the state of Utah. We welcome any student from the Salt Lake District or beyond to join us. But I have a few questions. The images of the other school facilities we saw at the last board meeting were somewhat startling, revealing how much investment has been made across the district, but not in the downtown and central city school buildings. I'm sure we can all agree that students in the downtown and central city neighborhoods matter as much as the students across the rest of this district. Will the district finally invest in Wasatch Elementary, your 2023 National Blue Ribbon School? Wasatch is in a highly visible location. Is it possible that by finally investing in Wasatch, the district could be taking another step toward bringing back more families and students in an increasingly competitive school environment? Is it possible that by investing in Wasatch, the district will be helping realize Dr. Grant's vision of a flagship school district? I believe the answer is yes.
Thank you, Julie. Next, we have Molly Robinson, followed by Terry Marasco. I'll remind other folks that have joined us, if you haven't had a chance to sign up and you're here to speak, please meet with April at the table in the middle of the auditorium. Molly?
Thank you, President Salazar. My name is Molly Robinson. I spoke here at the November 7th meeting. I'm an urban designer and city planner, and I am here to advocate again to maintain walkable neighborhoods by keeping our schools in our central city neighborhoods, which are our most walkable neighborhoods. There are a few flaws in the proposed plan. Number one, there were no options in the plan that was proposed. It was just, here's the plan, take it or leave it. We were told that there will be options. It might be this school and this school, it could be that school and that school, but the plan proposed was, here are the boundary changes, here are the schools that we're proposing to close. That sounds like one plan and not a variety of plans to choose from, for you to choose from. That was number one. Number two, there still hasn't been any discussion about future plans for the school properties that may be closed in terms of what happens to them in the future. And that's a lot of uncertainty for these communities to wrap their heads around. So that needs to be part of the discussion. Another flaw in the plan is that the plan proposes that the new walkable radii for elementary schools will be 1.5 miles. This is much too far to expect a 5-year-old to walk to school. 1.5 miles for an adult is approximately a 30-minute walk. Do you know how long it takes to walk a 5-year-old 1.5 miles? It's much longer than 30 minutes. And there's no busing for that distance, for anyone within that distance. So that needs to be considered. The school district also has not had sufficient discussions with Salt Lake City Planning Division regarding their plans for proposed school closures.
That's time, Molly.
And the data on demographics needs to be relooked at again, because it is insufficient. Thank you.
Terry Marasco, followed by Karen Valentine.
Hi, I'm Terry Marasco. I live in the Jordan Meadows District. I'm the chair of the Jordan Meadows Community Council. I'm an educator with 3 degrees and went into business, internet consultant for a number of years. When I was teaching in Detroit, I saw this process happening, and I think the worst thing that happens with what's going on here is the loss of community schools. But I want to speak to something different. I think the opportunity with these buildings that you may be closing is to create some magnet schools. One of the things I saw as an internet consultant, and I've been subbing in 4 districts now, including this one, is this incredible technological advance that's happening in business, for schools, etc. And to use these buildings as magnet schools, perhaps with focus on this new environment, business, technology, education, law, and begin to create schools that actually address that. And I think the funding can be coming from outside of the district. I think there are the Bill Gates societies, a couple of other ones that I'm very familiar with, local and otherwise, could fund these kinds of schools and perhaps draw people from out of the district that might be willing to pay tuition to attend these schools. So there are all kinds of opportunities, but I'm just going to fall back on when I was teaching in Detroit in the inner city, all black schools, volunteered and got a master's, I saw these kinds of things happening, and every school I taught in, which was a number of them in Detroit, were walk-in schools. Community people could walk to these schools. And at the time, we were allowed to walk kids home, which, of course, today you can't do, right? It's illegal or whatever. But anyway, so think about the opportunity that these schools may have for the local community as magnet schools, as well as outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Karen Valentine, followed by Ashley Cleveland.
Hi, I'm Karen Valentine. Thank you for having me. I live in the district of Wasatch, Bryant, and West High. And both my kids went to Wasatch, and my daughter graduated from West High. Thank you. Again, I know this is hard. I want to congratulate the board. I know it was a lot of work for the committee. But I want to recognize that maybe for the next time around, we should really start planning now, because this is not going to go away. I know, according to your numbers, our numbers are declining. So why can't we collaborate with the city legislature and the governor and do like the others have said, proper city planning, so we make Salt Lake a livable, attractive city for that people want to live with their families and not just a hub haven for young couples and college students. Also, the next time around, or even this time around if you had to redo it, why don't we consider all schools? We shouldn't leave certain schools off the table and just consider only the central city schools. It's with all the technology now, we could do a thorough analysis and do like simulation or just do planning. Like, what if you closed each school? It's a finite number of schools. You should be able to plan and say, how would it change the boundaries and traffic patterns if you close this school or that school, or even Indian Hills was off the list, by the way, twice the last 20 years. I was the SEC chair 20 years ago when they were doing another round of school closure at Wasatch. So anyway, I just want you to think responsibly, perhaps collaborate with the University of Utah. I bet if you made a master's project and had the students do a competition to see who could propose different plans or different evaluations of analysis, that would be a way to save money and also probably use collaboration with the U is one idea. There's probably many others. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ashley Cleveland, followed by John Nordquist.
Good evening, all. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this hearing and open your doors to all of us. My name is Ashley Cleveland. I am a city planner and I am a parent in the Guadalupe neighborhood. My child started kindergarten at Mary Jackson Elementary. I was proud to send her to a Spanish dual immersion school with a diverse population named after a Black woman in STEM. I was so excited to walk her to school and get involved with school activities. I was planning to collaborate and get involved with the school garden. When we attended for her kindergarten year, things started off bright with 2 great teachers and many friends. As time progressed, I saw how understaffed and underfunded they were with the lack of programs. I was relieved that the Boys and Girls Club was nearby to fill in service gaps, only to find out that they are underfunded as well. Not because of lack of skilled employees that care or student populations. These kids particularly suffer because we have a school district administration and budget who doesn't invest in small classroom sizes for diverse and low-income children. I've since taken my child to Wasatch Elementary because of a racial bullying incident that was not handled well by a very junior principal. There, we have 9 programs. There, the PTA raises $80,000 a year for their art programs. I'm concerned that school administration and population is incredibly white and not equipped to handle a new diverse student population. If Mary Jackson closes and kids are forced to integrate into a neighborhood that is not like their own, where they can't walk by their neighbor's house, where they have to exacerbate already poor air quality by having to drive to school, these issues will have these issues that we already have with health disparity and connectivity in Salt Lake City may become worse. I would much prefer the opposite. I want Mary W. Jackson to have more funding. I want school leadership to be involved with the I-15 expansion conversation. I want a national STEM Day celebration at Mary Jackson for Mary Jackson. We have such an opportunity to do so much better for these kids. We already have great teachers and smaller classroom sizes so that kids can excel past the pandemic. Why are we pulling away from them and forcing them into other neighborhoods? Thank you.
John Nordquist, followed by Nick Nichols.
Hello. I'm a single parent that came from Michigan about 4 years ago. I've been taking care of my daughter here. We live on a fixed income and, we're about 2 blocks away from Mary Jackson. And I, for one, am quite bamboozled by the fact that there has been all of these funds put out towards our infrastructure, and here our children are being shuffled aside because of budget problems? Where did all of this money for infrastructure go, if not to the most cornerstone of society? We are neglecting our children today by not taking cuts and being greedy for our own means and not paying attention to the children and educating them. I am afraid for my daughter to walk 2 blocks to school. This is not the society I grew up in. My daughter, every day that I walk to school 2 blocks with her, has to see people out there using drugs on the street. This is a neglect to our kids. Our children deserve a lot more than what we're giving them today.
Nick Nichols, followed by Antonia Silva.
All right, that's a tough act to follow. Thank you for the board being here, providing this illusion of democracy, and thanks for all the great speakers who have come before me. You're much more eloquent than I am. I just want to say I am very scared about what is going to happen with the land, with the infrastructure that's already built. I just think if you guys hand it over to private business, if we see another unaffordable apartment building being built, we just can't stand for that. Please don't do this. I mean, you guys will have zero credibility with me, probably with the rest of the entire tax base, everyone who pays taxes, everyone in this room, if these schools are closed and just given over to private business. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Next, we have Antonia Silva, and if we could have our Spanish translator join us to help interpret for this speaker. Oh, she's in the back. Okay, Yandri, thank you for doing this.
Buenas noches, señores. Muchas gracias por escucharnos a todos. Disculpen porque yo estoy muy triste, porque mi niño ya está triste. Ayer vino llorando, diciendo que ya se iban sus amigos, aunque ellos se escuchan como un rumor, pero todavía no le he dicho claramente que va a cerrar. Le he dado esperanza de que ojalá que no pudieras cerrar. Tengo 3 niños que han pasado por la escuela de Jackson desde el kinder y ahora uno está en middle school, otro está aquí en West High y el último que está en 2º grado y es un niño que se siente triste. Además nos ha ayudado mucho el tener el doble inmersión, que pudieran aprender también español correctamente. No es lo mismo cuando aprenden en casa. Y cuando cierren esta escuela, ¿qué va a ser de ellos? ¿A dónde voy a llevar? Porque siempre estamos pensando de que cada niño estuvieran cerca uno de la otra escuela. Así que vengo a dar mi voz y voto como padre de familia de la escuela Jackson. Disculpen mi sentimiento. Gracias.
So she's saying that her son goes to the school, Mary Jackson, and that he's very sad. He's heard rumors that the school's closing. She hasn't confirmed it. And she's just very sad, and all her children are sad. She has 3 children that have been in this school. And they're close together, and it's going to be hard for her to commute to the new school when they do close, if they close. When she has to go farther, it's going to be hard to commute. And thank you for listening to her. Thank you for listening to all the parents. She says sorry.
Jessica Hinsey, followed by Davy Davis.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity. I think at this point, I'm just basically going to reiterate some things that have already been said. So bear with me. I feel the first thing that I felt after the meeting in November was betrayal. Our community, we had a conversation at PTA early in the school year about, do we want a campaign? Do we want to get out there and be loud? And we decided that we wanted to be good community members, and we wanted to let this process go forward. We had Mr. Conley come to our school in September, presented the process. That process included giving options to you, the board, on something to vote on. It felt like a total betrayal to have one option given. It felt like a complete slap to not have options that we could now be here sharing, hey, we prefer this option, we would suggest this option. We were given, your school is closing, you have no options. Our school is also being cut in half along a line that fills that it's become this really hard line in our city's 700 East. The argument was we cannot have kids crossing 700 East. That is like the number one argument, Hawthorne should close. However, I could probably cite you half a dozen schools within this district that have their children crossing busy streets, including the school that our family is slated to go to, Whittier Elementary, which crosses State Street. So if you're going to give this as your reason number one, let's call it what it is. This is not a reason. The other issue I have is the argument of our data of numbers. We've been told our numbers are shrinking. This is coming after, as our community has heard, number after number of family wants to be in Hawthorne Elementary, has been turned away from Hawthorne Elementary. We've also been told that, or also felt betrayal in the district not supporting and taking care of our CNA program that was taken from us last year, that also took our numbers down, and we no longer have those community members in our school. Thank you for your time.
Davy Davis, followed by Joey Rios.
Hey folks, thanks for your time. I am a Wasatch parent. I moved here from Chicago to be back near family, and Wasatch being walking distance from my house was a huge part of my decision-making process to move here from Chicago. I was of course relieved to see that Wasatch didn't make the final cut. But I'm both alarmed and outraged that it was even a possibility in the first place, and that the school and that the school has to be pitted against these other deserving schools. I know this isn't entirely within the board's control, and that the board is facing a destructive cycle of funding around public schools. Money is being divested on a federal level from our funded schools through concerted political efforts, and I encourage everyone to fight against that. I agree with the member of our community that pointed out that you, as folks in a position of power and connection with our state and federal legislatures, can advocate for what you think is right. And I think that these schools need to be treated like what they are, which is huge community resources. And really, if you kill a school in a neighborhood in Salt Lake, in the center city that's walkable, that's close, that has all these amenities around it, you have to think about it like you're killing this mother tree, this huge resource for the community. And you should never do that. And if you think you should, I think that you need to reevaluate why the decision is being made. Thanks. And I know that a lot of factors factored into me moving back to Salt Lake. But what's happening with I-15 and UDOT was one of them that made me question my decision. What's happening with the lake is one that made me question my decision. The idea of a school like Wasatch being on a chopping block affected my decision, and we don't want other people to look at our city and say, actually, I don't want to be there. Thank you.
Joey Rios, followed by Tyrone Williams. I will remind folks, if you are here to speak and you haven't had the opportunity to sign up, there is a table in the middle of the auditorium where you can do so.
Hello. So
Hello.
my children go to Mary Jackson School, and I believe no school should be shut down at all. It is a huge transition for every kid to deal with all of this for all of them, not just separate schools. Every school has all these kids that we need to think about, and Jackson Elementary has the dual classes for the bilingual. So if you shut that one down, Rose Park school zones don't have much options to go to for kids to learn bilingual languages and for the Spanish people to learn English also. So those are just my reasons of why this school shouldn't be shut down for the language, because, sorry, I got distracted. And then the walking distance is very safe for a lot of the kids to get to Jackson Elementary. The other schools that they would be forced to go to if it was closed is a long distance for my children to be walking in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Tyrone Williams, followed by Tyliana Williams.
My name is Tyrone Williams. I go to Mary W. Jackson, and I love my school. That I don't want my school to shut down.
Thank you, Tyrone, for sharing. Tyliana.
Hi, my name is Tyliana. I go to Mary W. Jackson. We got to keep the school open because if we don't keep it open, people won't learn. And a lot of people are saying there's not a lot of kids at Mary W. Jackson. There's a lot over there, and people got to learn.
Thank you, Tyliana. Next, we have Pachuco Lautaro.
Check, check. Pachuco Lautaro, representing the Rose Park Brown Berets. We are here demanding to keep our Mary W. Jackson, Riley, Benyon, Hawthorne open. Closing down school perpetrates the systemic racism that our youth continue to face in our brown and black communities. Closing schools down is another form of psychological trauma, displacement, and punishment for our youth. You mask issues of hallways and lack of windows. That means our schools have been neglected. Our schools, it also seems like you guys have a double standard going on as well. For example, there's more students at Mary W. Jackson, yet you guys want to displace Mary W. Jackson students to go all the way to Newman. That's on the other side of Rose Park. And this is making it harder for the parents to engage with their children's education and for them to engage in the school with volunteer opportunities. You guys say you guys won't give up the property, but look around. We all know there's a high possibility to make a move, that this will be a move to make more unaffordable apartments, the I-15 expansion, and ultimately pushing out our low-income brown and black students of color that have lived here for years. All of these are interconnected, and to deny this is to deny the life struggle we are facing here on the west side. The youth deserve education at their homebound school. The youth deserve to keep the resources in close proximity. Keep the schools open, keep the schools open, keep the schools open. Mantener las escuelas abiertas. Gracias.
Thank you, Pachuco. Hannah Nevis, followed by Carmen Cozart.
Hello. My name is Hannah Nevis, and I'm an art education major at Westminster University. I'm also the lead tutor for the Westminster's Walkways program, which is a civic outreach program for K through 12 kids to provide tutoring, get them interested in a higher education, and for the students at Westminster to receive hands-on experience as future teachers. I'm here to represent myself and the future teachers coming out of Westminster. I currently tutor and student teach at Hawthorne in kindergarten, first grade, and sixth. I would like to curate awareness for how important Hawthorne is to future teachers at Westminster. Hawthorne is an amazing and welcoming place for students, teachers, and future ones as well. The accessibility and welcoming nature of Hawthorne is an invaluable tool for future teachers coming out of Westminster. If it is voted for closure, it will be a sad and terrible loss, not only for current students, faculty, and staff at Hawthorne, but also for the future teachers coming out of Westminster. Thank you.
Carmen Cozart, followed by Amelia Nium E. Tolu. Sorry. Thank you, Sika.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me an opportunity to speak. I am a grandma who is a single-parent grandma raising my grandson, and we are in a situation where he was attending Mary Jackson Elementary. I feel for all these families. My question is, how is closing the schools going to help kids like my grandson receive the help that they're supposed to have? Because my child has been out of school for 2 months. We came from Mary Jackson Elementary, and no one cares. At the school, I'm on the heels of the young lady back here who spoke. The African-American woman who spoke, those are my words. And I utter those words that she spoke. My child has been out of school. We are in a transition. Moving the children to another school, how is that helping the children? My child, the transition, when you're dealing with special education in 504, how are those children's needs going to be met? How are they getting help, the special education students? Because I'm not getting any help. Explain to me how for 2 months, my child has been out of school because the school district has not reached out to help. They're not offering the help because, like the one lady said, for everybody that you're trying to move their kids, when you're coming from a social economic background of black, brown, lower income, we were transitioned not by choice but by force into another school of a higher economic. They weren't accepting of us. And right now, my kid has been out of school for 2 months. I cry. I'm trying to help him at home. And we're just barely getting meetings because they're not interested in the child that has come to their side, for lack of better terminology, their neck of the woods. How do we fix that? How do you help with that? Because that's going to become a problem for everybody. Once you close these schools down, what are we going to do at Mary Jackson? To the brother that spoke back there, we need to bring in funding for those schools. We went transition not by choice, but by force. In that school, the eloquence in that school, we hadn't seen anything like that. But the transition had to happen. Now we're just stuck 2 months out of school, and no one has reached out. No one.
Thank you for your comments, Carmen. And Superintendent, will you please have somebody from your cabinet reach out to Ms. Cozart? Up next, we have Amelia Numutolu, followed by Rosie Cochran.
Sí, Yoto'ofa. My name is Amelia Leafai Tulangi Numeitolu. I am the mother of Tangatula Kepa and Pele Tawai, but of many children who are brown, black, and here on the west side. I am vice chair at Liberty Elementary, but I've come here to speak to you again, council members, about our invisibility and our shutdown at Newman Elementary. And I say this because our children were forced to leave, I'm here because of the closure and displacement and the greed and the visibility of my children at Newman. I met with Ms. Carr, a teacher at Newman School for 30 years, and she said, Leah, please, I know you don't want to do this anymore. Please go and speak on my behalf. She was a teacher, and now Hawthorne parents, that principal is at your school. I support your school, but not your principal. The principal, my children were called the N-word. We were violently hurt, pushed, called Indians. Again, they were called the N-word, and Principal Nick Shar did nothing. We left. After
Amelia,
that,
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but these comments aren't germane to the conversation.
And the principal left as well. And I am saying this because please do something about this. So that principal is now at your school. We love Hawthorne. My son went there in kindergarten. But I'm saying,
Amelia,
I want to let you know to please.
there are other
They
avenues
didn't
for
do
redress.
anything. The school district didn't do anything. They just put that principal in another school. This woman, Ms. Carr, all the teachers left. We do not have the same principal at Newman. Our family left. They do not have the same vice principal. 6 families left because that family, Destiny Mestas and their family, continued to sexually harass students. And they told me, please, we don't have the courage to come up and speak with you. Please, do your job. Do not just sit there. On behalf of the children of this world, break the cycle and stop the violence.
Rosie Cochran, followed by Megan Lopez.
Hello, my name is Anthony Cochran, better known to some of the people in this room as Rosie Cochran. I just wanted to share some of the reasons I think Hawthorne Elementary should remain open. First of all, this school has been a part of our community and town's history for over 100 years. I myself attended Hawthorne for its 100-year anniversary. Every moment I spent as a student there was a joyful and rememberable one. Every lesson learned stuck with me better than any school I have ever attended, and I've been to many. As a youth, I was homeless for the majority of that time, either living with family or in shelters. Hawthorne became a home for me, a safe place with loving teachers who care for their students and who cared for me. I still walk through those doors, and a teacher will remember me and the time I spent behind those walls. I still catch myself reciting reasons to be positive in the morning like we did in Miss Schmock's class, or even silly little things like being able to recite the 50 states in alphabetical order for no reason, or being the last elementary school in my district to learn 3rd grade cursive. Did you know some kids don't know how or never got a chance to learn? Lucky for me, my 3rd grade teacher was also my dad's. Long story short, this isn't your ordinary school, and I would hate to see the walls crumble. Those walls built me into who I am today, and heck, I may have not made it out of that school if it weren't for them saving my life time and time again. Thank you, Hawthorne, for your excellence, and thank you all for listening. Please help save my school. Go Hawthorne!
Thank you. Megan Lopez, followed by Martin Stoles.
Hi, my name is Megan Lopez, and I live in Rose Park, and my kids attend Newman Elementary, and I'm on the SCC at Newman as well. Thank you for listening to the community and allowing everyone a voice at this meeting. I would like to start by saying that I acknowledge and agree that closing schools in the district is essential to be good financial stewards of the community and to ensure that we are providing quality education for all students. However, I have serious concerns with the process that was undertaken to select the schools for closure. First, how is it equitable to exclude East Bench schools from possible closure? I am also concerned with the previously brought up grandma request that reveals that the so-called process for determining schools to be closed were questionably followed, and the committee instead began with a list of schools. If the Salt Lake City School District is to be a flagship district and ensure equitable access to all students, they should be able to prove that the closure process was equitable across the district and that the safety and walkability for West Side students was adequately considered in the boundary realignment. For example, students living on the west side of I-15 should not have to cross it to get to school. Members of the board have acknowledged in the last meeting that this process was not as equitable as it could have been. I implore you to vote no on the proposed school closure and revamp your process to be more transparent and equitable. The school closure process is a huge opportunity to increase equity across the east-west divide of the district. Please don't pass up this opportunity to ensure your process of school closure is transparent and equitable.
Martin Stoles, followed by Andrea Lee.
Good evening. Good evening. Superintendent, President Salazar, honorable board members, thank you for your time. I have 3 words that I want the board to take away from my comments tonight because other people tonight have said a lot more and have had a lot more things to say. Fiduciary, trust, honesty. I'm concerned because it's no secret that this board is infested with the toxicity and a dysfunction unlike any that this district has experienced in its history. And people think about fiduciary duty. Sometimes they mix that up with the word financial duty. They're very different. A fiduciary duty is a duty of loyalty. This district's loyalty is to the entire district into perpetuity, not just for the short term of your elected service. This board has failed in its fiduciary duty to the people who live, the residents of the city, who are members of the district, to the voters, and to the people of Utah. The Salt Lake City School District is and should be the flagship school district of the state. Hawthorne Elementary, for example, where my 2 daughters have gone, my youngest is graduating, so I'm not really affected by this future closure directly. And I'm not speaking on my own behalf in that sense. I'm speaking on behalf of all the voters who have put you in positions of trust, of fiduciary duty. The Hawthorne is a blue ribbon school. I'm sorry, I wanted to just go through those 2 other terms. So I request that the board has not been honest in this process, as other people have explained with greater detail, and it hasn't earned or demonstrated trust. And I would ask that the board reconsider this process, start over, as others have explained and stated much more eloquently, do this process correctly with community involvement, transparency, and honesty, trust, and fiduciary duty. Thank you.
Andrea Lee, followed by Giridhar Tagaryan.
Hi everyone. My name is Andrea Lee. I am a Hawthorne parent. My son is currently in 2nd grade, and I have a younger son who actually turns 5 tomorrow, who will be joining his brother next year for kindergarten, and he's very thrilled. I honestly don't know whether I'm more heartbroken or more infuriated by this entire thing. We started this school year off learning that our school was on this list of potential closure. 3 months later, 2 days before Thanksgiving, mind you, we learned Hawthorne is on the short list. What a way to ring in our holiday season. On top of that, you tell the community, the parents, that you want our input, but 3 months to make this decision? Do you think any of us believe that you took our input into consideration in 3 months' time? Like, that's not even possible. I also don't know how you managed to get all this data in 3 months' time either. I have a math degree with a stats emphasis. I guarantee you those numbers do not come in 3 months. The really ironic thing is when you read the proposal online, it states that any schools that are closed will be replaced by something beneficial to the community. So do you mean like a school? Because I'm pretty sure there is nothing more beneficial to our community than Hawthorne Elementary.
Girdar Tigarian, followed by Tanya Keller, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I'm sure I did.
I don't know if I can follow that act, but I want to oppose the school board's decision in closing Hawthorne Elementary. My daughter went there. My younger daughter is slated to go there. We live in the school district. I don't want to one-up the parents who said they moved from Chicago, Michigan, but I moved from India. My wife moved from Singapore to live in this district, to be in the Hawthorne school district, right? It's academically excellent. That's why we chose that school district. And I wanted to point out this fact that all of us adults are talking about this. Has anybody spoken to the kids, right? They should be the key element of this decision-making process. Has anybody talked to the kids, made a survey of how these kids feel in each of these classroom settings? Specifically, Emerson versus Hawthorne. Emerson has no windows. It's an older building. It's slated to be shut down sooner than Hawthorne Elementary, which has, 23 years left, right? Why are we wasting the taxpayers' money? The decision should be logical. If Emerson has, 13 years and Hawthorne has 23 years, it's a logical decision. Why won't you keep Hawthorne, right? The other thing I wanted to point out was mental health crisis is the biggest crisis for kids today, right? These kids, this generation has gone through COVID, mind you, and they're just going back to school. They're leading a normal life, making friends and everything. Imagine what happens to their lives if you suddenly close this and put them in another school. They have to go and make new friends. Social anxiety. They don't have their teachers anymore. They have to walk 5 blocks extra to go to this new school, right? Why are we putting our kids through so much trauma, right? If funding is the only issue here in keeping schools open, I'm sure every single parent here will stand and raise funds for these schools to be open, right? Or let's not have a fancy building downtown. Let's put that money towards downtown, towards the schools, right? Every single parent here will stand for hours raising money to keep Hawthorne open. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Tanya Keller, followed by Elizabeth Festa Watson.
Hello. I'm going to read this. I live down the street from Hawthorne. We moved from the boring suburbs in 2019 to live in the city and raise our kids in a walkable, diverse environment. We love it. I have 2 kids at Hawthorne. My youngest started kindergarten online. Then last year, their special program, CNA, was canceled out of the blue. Now they're really stressed about their school closing, after already struggling to integrate into their neighborhood classroom. When the recommendation for closing Hawthorne came out, it was revealed that during the process, the district chose 2 schools near each other to compete in a battle of the death to figure out which would stay open. Emerson should not have been on the list for potential closure, as it's a hub school, and the district revealed that they never intended to close any hub schools. Knowing that, how could Hawthorne have ever had a chance? Why would the district choose 2 schools to evaluate with the aim of closing one when they've admitted that they had no intention of closing one of the schools because it's a hub school? I can get behind keeping a hub school open over another, even one I love, if it's for the best for the community and those students. But this issue proves that the whole process has not been well thought out at all, and I don't trust that any of these 4 schools should close at this time without reevaluating the process. Thank you.
Elizabeth Festa Watson, followed by Michael Gillett.
So I have chosen to retire here from working in the Washington, D.C. area. I was a managing director for the American Chemistry Council. And let me tell you, when things don't feel right, I follow the money. And I follow whose vested interests are being served. And let me tell you, it's not the community. It's not the people who used to live here. It's not the people who came here. It's not the people who have invested here. And it's certainly not the children. So I live on a wonderful street. In fact, my neighbor, however you pronounce his name, Giddy, his two daughters. There are like 5 kids that either went to Hawthorne or who would be going to Hawthorne. There are about 5 other small, and we live on a small street, 5 other kids that were born that are under the age of 2. So we have all these kids. It's a community. It's on our little street. And you're going to split them up here and there. Who can now afford, between the kids who can afford, because their parents can afford, versus the kids that can't. And what's happening on that street, which you will cause by shutting down schools, is just in micro what's happening across the whole valley. I suggest you don't close any school. We're going to fight tomorrow about a massive set of skyscrapers in Sugar House. And at one point, we're being told we've got this burgeoning population, and at the same time, we're closing schools. Is it because we are pretty much saying we don't want the old people and we don't want the young people? You're pitting East Side against West Side. I am a product of a second-generation immigrant and a product of a public school education.
It's time.
That is the great leveler. And you're pitting people against each other. And the mental health issue, you say on one hand, we care, but actions speak louder than words, and it's all about the money. And let that go on the record.
Michael Gillett, we will take the last call for anybody that would like to speak who hasn't had a chance to sign up yet. There is a table in the middle of the auditorium for you to do so. Michael?
My name is Michael Gillette. If I had an E at the end of my name, it probably would have turned out a lot differently for me.
Sorry about
I'm
that,
a
Mike.
retired United States Army captain, and my son is a student at Hawthorne Elementary School. Any of these school closures is a huge disservice to the community. Our number one priority should be for our children and to give them the best opportunity and do what is right by them. My son has a class size of 28 students. You want to go ahead and consolidate that into an even smaller spot and have even more kids into a class? That is insane. When I was a platoon leader in Afghanistan and I was getting shot at by the jihadists, guess were the 3 things that they didn't attack? They didn't attack the improved roads that we built for them, they didn't attack the mosques, and they didn't attack the schools. It's pretty bad that the jihadists had it more together than what this community is. And if you had any self-respect, you would go ahead and put your letter of resignation because of that. Now I want you to look at my son and see the kids that you're impacting just like it's been brought out there. I am disgusted. And I will wait the last 56 seconds so that you can go ahead and think about that and everything I've said as you look at him and the future that you're taking away from him and a whole bunch of other kids. It is not fair. Say something, buddy. You can have my time. I yield my time.
Absolutely not fair. Not even close to being fair. I want you to not shut it down.
You like your classes?
And you're taking away a whole bunch of future to at least 28 kids? That is the worst. I never want to see you take down Hawthorne at all.
Thank you. Adriana Manzo, followed by Sarah Gronland.
I am Adriana Manzo. I currently go to Highland High School, and I'm a junior in high school. I have gone through all 7 years of Hawthorne Elementary School, and I have gotten the pleasure of being able to watch my sister go through school and get to experience that. And it's just very painful to see that all of these kids don't get to have a sustainable education. They have to worry about the connections that they're going to keep and whoever's going to be there. Like, even I still am connected to people at my school, in like my math class, like people that I don't even talk to anymore. Like, I'm still connected to them through the elementary school that I went to and all the people and the connections that I made. And even now, like, our after-school bus system at Highland, like, we are connected by elementary school systems. That's where you get dropped off. And Hawthorne's been created as a safe space. So knowing that that building could be created into something else, it makes you feel weird walking home knowing that that isn't your school anymore, that that's going to be a different building. Overall, all the connections that we made are very important, and they mean a lot. So I want my sister to have the education that she deserves, even though it's already come out to be something completely different. I want her to be in a supported place and to have the friends and the connections that she deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Gronland, followed by Angelica Catalan.
I'm tall. Okay. Hello. I'm a former Salt Lake City School District teacher from Horizonte and a resident of the Newman Elementary neighborhood. I'm very disturbed at these school closures. In particular, I was a math teacher, bachelor's with a statistics emphasis. It seems like there's highly insufficient data for public review to be making this decision in the first place. You've got 4 pages of spreadsheets at the very end of the long document posted online explaining your reasoning for why the schools that have been selected should be closed. But all of that additional data for any of the other schools for the district is not offered to us. That seems questionable to me. I think that's information that everyone should be allowed to review rather than just seeing the proof of your work. Also, in this, there's a statement, there were many this is a quote, there were many data points in which none of the schools had outliers, thus those data points did not create a distinction between the 7 schools and were not used in the following analysis. Anyone in like a statistics class knows outliers go on both sides, both the positive and the negative. Where are the positive outliers? Where are the positives of these schools? And were those considered at all rather than just looking at things that may be concerns? Additionally, looking at how this map is being redrawn, it's creating long and unsafe walking paths. I know one in particular from a section of Mary Jackson's current district that is being proposed to be included into the Washington Elementary School would require students to cross, at least based on Google Maps looking, 5 or 6 lanes of train tracks in order to get to that school. Are you going to have them walk? I know if anyone's a West Side resident like me, you have been late to something because of the train. Kids shouldn't have to be late coming to or from school because they have to cross the train tracks to get into a different district. Finally, have people even considered utilizing this space more optimally? Having extra space seems like an opportunity, not a problem. When 32% of people want to spend the record budget surplus of the state on education, let's do it. Find the money. Use the space effectively for the communities to revive and improve them and support the people who live there.
Angelica Catalan, followed by Brandy Yanagui. Angelica Catalan, are you still with us here tonight? Brandy Yanagui.
Hello, my name is Brandy Anagi, and I attended Mary W. Jackson, and I hope that my children get to attend it.
I think that it is honestly sickening that there's a list at all. Our children have been through enough within the last 5 years, and I don't think they need to go through more. I think that Mary W. Jackson is one of the first successful schools to tackle language barriers. You speak of all of these votes and these surveys that you've taken, but I don't see 90% of Mary W. Jackson's population here, which is parents who can't even speak, let alone read a language of English. I want to know when and how those surveys were taken because I live in that neighborhood and I did not ever get a survey. Never was asked to vote about anything. You know, you talk about closing down these schools. You should be talking about creating more schools, not closing them down. Creating smaller classrooms so that teachers get the opportunity of having that one-on-one relationship with not just parents, but students as well. I'm here to protest you closing these schools, but also creating more schools. Use that money that you have to create more schools because it is because of these students that you guys have jobs at all. If you close down these schools, you are also putting up the rate of non-attendance. 90% of these students walk to school, let alone do they have a car because their parents are illegal. They don't have driver's license to be driving their kids to school. The rate of accidents with students crossing the streets and getting run over, because it does happen, is gonna go up as well. You need to take these children into consideration because the rates of students that go to school will go down and so will your pay. So if money is a thing, think about that because your pockets will not have a lot of money.
Thank you, Brandy. That concludes our public hearing. We do have one more speaker, Nancy Hernandez, who's waited patiently to fulfill her time and request to speak to the board as part of our regular request to speak. Nancy, are you still with us? Nancy Hernandez? That concludes our public hearing. The board will take a brief 10-minute break.
riding the art bus for like at least 15 years ago. Okay. Does he? Her hair looks really pretty tonight. Thank you. I got braided. Thank you. That's pretty.
So do you want me to invite the cabinet up here, or do you just want them up here on stage now?
Let's go. Thank you. What?
Do you want your cabinet up here now, or do you want to invite you when we introduce the topic?
Oh, they come up now just to minimize disruption.
I'm up here. Thank you.
I think that Alan was generally smelling. Oh, yours is on. Oh, mine is on. Are we like talking about it? It wasn't bad, but it was fun. So I think or did a live stream off. If you didn't turn it off, we can all hear a funny story that you don't. I laughed about. This is you, Tiff. That's me. I don't know if there'll be anything. What? Is there a mouse? Hear that, but I don't know what it is. A mouse.
Thank you to members of the community for allowing us to take a brief break, and we're sorry that that took a little bit longer than we had expected. Up next on our agenda is our discussion agenda. Superintendent, would you like to introduce the topic of a recommendation on long-term school closure and boundary adjustments discussion item?
Yes, I'm just going to do a short introduction here to our discussion to go over just a couple of things that we have touched on before in this boundary recommendation and school closure recommendation. But do want to start with an acknowledgement up front about the consequence of these decisions. And having heard from so many community members this evening and the challenges of taking up school closure, of moving forward on school closure. We've heard from parents and families about their wishes and hopes and dreams for students, their children. We've heard from students the pleas to keep schools open. This is going to be hard. This will cause disruption. I want the community to know that we heard you in that and have taken notes. I noted that, in particular, student friendships came up a lot. And the possible loss of friendships in classrooms or on the playground. The concerns of parents in juggling after-school care or transportation issues or trying to get to other places in the community for their schools. And particularly, I think it's important to acknowledge how much schools matter as connections for community and for families, how much they are that central point for resources and gathering. We took a lot of notes tonight and attend to a lot of details in people's lives and what the school has meant to them. I want you to know as a board that I am committed to supporting students and families and staff through any transitions should the board vote to close schools and make boundary adjustments. It's important to know what matters to families as we make these transitions, and I'm glad to have heard from them tonight and have those notes here and to be able to hear from them. We want this to work for every child and every family and every staff member in our district. We're going to work to do this well if we move forward. But I want to return again to the reality of where we sit right now. This is a chart taken from a recent report just released last week by the Kem Gardner Policy Institute. This was a report on just Salt Lake City's youth, not the whole state, where they said in the next 8 to 10 years we're going to lose 40,000 school-aged children across the state, but rather look just at Salt Lake City itself. And our district is contiguous with the city. They pulled this information from the census. In this report, they noted that the under 18 population in the city declined by 5,000 students in the last decade, even as its adult population continued to grow. The Salt Lake City population hit an all-time high, and yet it also hit an all-time low in the lowest number of children below the age of 18 in the city in more than a century here in Salt Lake City. If you look particularly in this graph, the last 10 years, this is showing from 1950 to 2020, but in the last 10 years, the decline. One of the reasons I chose to show this graph out of all those in the report is to put our situation in a context, a regional context, even a national context in some ways. Salt Lake City is the line in red, and we also have Boise, Denver, and Reno as contrasts to show that all of these areas are feeling the same underlying trends that are happening around smaller family sizes, particularly, I think. Also, the increasing costs of housing and particularly in urban areas. So we're part of a larger context that's happening, and we're responding to that in Salt Lake City as the number of children declines in our city boundaries. The report also showed, and this was important too, it showed the changes by census tract, and it noted that the largest declines in the under 10-year-old population happened on our west side, in the areas of Rose Park, Poplar Grove, Glendale, West Point, and Fair Park. They experienced the largest decline in the under 10 population. This is the reality in which we need to consider matching our number of schools with the number of students that we have in the district. As we talked about last time, our recommendation as a district is to close 4 elementary schools: Hawthorne Elementary, Emlyn Benyon Elementary, Mary W. Jackson Elementary, and Riley Elementary. I want to take a moment, just because of the number of comments tonight about property use, and be clear that we have made no decisions about property use to this point, nor do we have any plans in place for the use of property at this moment. There are multiple ways we could use the land that would serve the district and the community, and we're going to look into those with the board, should the board vote to close schools. But until then, there have been no determinations about property. As you know, just in the last board meetings, we made a determination about the Roslyn Heights property because the building needed to be torn down. The board has decided to put some fields and courts there that will serve the children of Salt Lake City. So that will be available to them. That school was closed over 20 years ago. Our intention is not to hand these properties over for immediate property development. That is not the goal or the interests of the school district. And so we'll move forward in a measured, deliberative fashion in deciding what to do about property use. Along with the recommendation to close the schools, we also recommended boundary adjustments to 14 additional schools as listed here. As you know, and as I hope the public knows, the maps for all of these changes are on our district website, and you can look and even put in your own address and find out where you have been, where you might be reassigned should a school close. Pardon me. Also, I want to remind everybody that we are an open enrollment state. That means that families still have the option to choose another school in the district if they would like and apply to attend that school. If we were to close schools, students may continue to attend the school they are attending this school year if it was their neighborhood boundary school and it remains open. Excuse me, everybody. These colds are longer lasting these days. Families may continue to use the open enrollment process to attend a district school that is not their neighborhood boundary school. And the district will honor current open enrollment permits if the schools remain open. Should the board choose to close schools, we have also, as a district, recommended the placement of programs. This recommendation, this program placement would accompany the recommendation, so the board would vote on the recommendation to close schools and to do boundary adjustments. With that, the district would make these changes. So, excuse me, everyone. Our magnet extended learning programs are in green. Alan, could you talk through this for me?
Yes, so you see on the map, magnet extended learning programs in green at Edison Elementary School, Whittier Elementary School, and Indian Hills Elementary School. And our dual language immersion programs, otherwise known as DLI, would be placed at Newman Elementary School, Mountain View Elementary School, which currently has one, and Nibley Park, which is a K through 8 school.
Thank you. With all of this, the transitions for our students and families matter most. So, to let people know, should the board vote to close schools, we will put our attention, our energy, and our resources toward the transition. We'll put funding and personnel toward the transition. And we will begin transition activities right away. The transition to new schools would happen in the fall of 2024. I'm sorry. This is worse than I had anticipated. Thank you.
So number 2, we would establish a special open enrollment period assuming a vote happens in January, we would then open a special enrollment period for those students that are affected by school closure. We'd begin the communication process early and often, over-communicating to options, boundaries, just making sure that the activities that we have planned are communicated over and over and over again. We support our students, families, and staff in the transition. Part of that will be focused on including social and emotional support to students at their current school, delivered by their school counselor, and then as we prepare to continue those resources on to the next year. And we also want to provide activities which will help create new communities in these new school boundaries.
I might turn this whole thing to you, Alan. The talking has made that cough so much worse. There are just a couple more slides. I think what's important here with these proposed new school boundaries is that these are new communities that we would be creating. I apologize again. Can you step in?
Yep. So with these new communities that will be created with these new boundaries, the schools will work to create and embrace these new communities and create new practices, traditions, and combine and integrate programs between schools that may close or new boundaries to really create these new communities. Important to note that, the school can only do so much to create these communities, so we would implore parents and families to also participate in creating these new communities as these boundary changes potentially go forward. And with all this, we keep in mind that our aim is to build a vibrant learning community and use resources efficiently for student learning. Even in the difficult process of considering closing schools, we are looking to open new pathways and opportunities for our students. We can open pathways to additional advanced academic programs. We can establish additional dual language immersion programs. We can build career education pathways in our upper grades that increase student internships and apprenticeships programs. We can build additional early college and concurrent enrollment programs that create pathways for our students into further training and study after high school graduation.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for suffering through that too, everybody. And your patience with that. That's not quite how I had hoped to present tonight. The talking certainly exacerbates this. With that, we're going to turn to a discussion time for you as the board, and I will certainly be turning to the cabinet here, who has joined us on stage to answer a lot of the questions and certainly speak on my behalf since I'm having so much trouble with that. So, turn it to you, President Salazar.
Thank you, Dr. Grant. I'm sorry you're still sick.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Board, this is now our time to ask any follow-up questions. We've had this information since our last board meeting when the initial recommendation was made by Dr. Grant. So I'll turn it over to you all if you have any questions.
I have a question.
Board Member Anderson?
One of the more frequent topics that came up in the public hearing is about facilities and specifically how those things are calendared. So I guess my question, which probably would be for Isaac, would be what would be the plan in the coming year, regardless of what happens with school closure, in terms of updates the board can expect to receive on facilities? And could you offer any clarity for those questions about, why certain areas seem that communities feel the building has been taken care of differently, and what may be some reasons why they think that?
Is that working? Okay. So our team in facilities, we do an annual analysis and we make a recommendation of a 5-year capital projects plan. We make that recommendation for consideration of what those projects may be and what the funding would be required to do those. The last, obviously this is my first cycle of that, but our team has been working very hard to present that early this next year to show what we think needs to be done and what those priorities are. And then it comes down to the available funding to get those projects done.
And I just want to add to that. If you look at our capital expenditures in a 1-year slice or even in a 5-year slice, you're not going to see you would need to look at the life of the building, because you may get in a certain 5-year slice, a particular building needed a new roof or new HVAC system or something very expensive, whereas another school didn't have those needs because they already received that outside of that 5-year slice. So I just want to, depending on how you look at it, is depending on the grand total you're going to see at each school. It doesn't indicate that a school has been neglected.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
Board Member Sweat?
So I'm trying to look through some of my notes, and I'm sorry that I'm probably going to stumble a little bit, but I think that one of the things that came to mind to me was a comment that was actually made by Sarah Young, who is the city council member for the precinct that we share. And when I heard her plea to the district about having family support, individualized support, around the transitions, around transportation, around open enrollment, I think that it would be good for, although it's touched on, it's not delved down into. There's not a deep dive down into it. And I think that when you have a city council person, who is saying to us, what kind of individualized support are we going to help them with? Even though we've talked about, for an example, the open enrollment piece, that we'd be able to give some exceptions. But when we still have our community asking about that, that means that we're not communicating it very well. So I think as we look at going forward, whatever the decision is made, that piece is important, because I think that when we leave families to try and navigate through this on their own, there's going to be frustration, there's going to be misunderstandings. So whatever we can provide to them in a bullet-pointed document of a step-by-step, whether it's even the question about the 1.5 transportation, living outside of the 1.5 radius, and the idea of needing to have more buses. It's a variance of different things that she brought up, but those are things that we've talked about or touched on a little bit, and also in the report that we were given. But if those questions are still out there, we're not doing the due diligence of providing the information that we need to.
I appreciated her comments on that as well, Board Member Sweat, and I think we need to take a lot of that to heart and make some changes about how we interact with families around these questions to support them. Yep.
I'll just add something quickly. That's part of the reason that this public comment process and the things we heard, not just tonight, but all the folks who've taken time to email us, to speak to us in person during meetings, to leave comments on the website form. Those things have been important because we've learned some of these issues that we need to message more about. At our information meeting that was held entirely in Spanish, we spoke with a family whose child has now graduated high school, but many years ago when they were first starting school, they went to what they thought was their neighborhood school. It turned out that wasn't it, but everyone else near them, their friends, were attending that school. They weren't aware about open enrollment and ended up going to a non-public school. And things like that have helped us to understand the needs in our community. We've had conversations during the initial transition planning about some of those things that that we can do. We know that a lot of the work we do in the district is going digital, but for our school communities in Salt Lake City, that in-person touch is still really important. The paper copies are still important, and we've had conversations about making sure that we, whether it's attending a school community council meeting or a way that fits the needs of each particular school that's impacted, that we can walk families through some of these processes so that they are fully informed about their options. And I've been grateful for the input of our principals throughout this process too, because they've flagged for us some of the unique needs and some of the different ways in which we need to be communicating right now with their families.
Thank you. Board Member Jensen?
Yes, it seems to me that one of the other questions that came up in the public hearing, and then also in many of the emails that we've received, are questions about the special district programs and the adjustment in where they're located, and whether there's space in the buildings that we're looking at. I'm just hoping that we can answer those questions and how we determined where to place those programs in the buildings that we chose, and how to provide that was another significant question. How are those children, are we ensuring their transportation to these different programs?
I'm going to ask Dr. Hall to step in on that one and because more information is available in our rationale, but I think sharing that tonight is valuable.
Thank you for the opportunity and for your question, Board Member Jensen. It is never an easy thing to think about moving students, and it's never an easy thing to think about where a program may go and what impact it will have on the school that it is left, as well as the school that it is moving to. We have 2 programs that are remaining in their places for each of these 2 different programs, and 2 that will be hosted in new places. Of course, for the Magnet Gifted and Talented, or ELP program, the Whittier program will remain in its same place. That school is large enough, obviously, to contain the 6 classrooms plus a robust neighborhood school. That's one of the things that we have talked about throughout this process, and direction that the board has given us has been to make sure that as we look at this, we are maintaining robust neighborhood programs in all of the schools where we have a district special program. And that means that these schools still need to have enough classrooms once a special program has been placed to make sure that we have room for 2 or 3 neighborhood programs in every school. So that was one very key priority. Another priority was making sure that all of our students could access these programs. And in looking at that, we needed to make sure that we could break them into areas so that busing and transportation could be as efficient as possible. And so we have been working with those, looking at those locations and the schools that would feed into them. And we feel like over time that is really going to be an asset to all of our communities, to be able to say any student in our district who wants to participate in a dual immersion or is in a Magnet Gifted and Talented program will have transportation to and from that school. One of the concerns that you raised is, are the schools large enough, and what does that busing look like? And since the last meeting, when we heard many of those concerns from parents, we have had conversations about that as a cabinet with the superintendent. And I would just like to remind the board that Nibley Park, where we are placing one of our dual language immersion programs, which could be as many as 12 to 14 classrooms when that is in play, is one of the largest elementary schools that we have in the district, with a capacity of 700 students and over 40 classrooms. Indian Hills, which will be hosting a Magnet GT program, is on the other side of Foothill. There have been several questions about that busing, and I have spoken with Isaac Astle and Mr. Astle and his team. have reminded all of us that when a route is hazardous or unsafe, regardless of whether or not it is less than 1.5 miles or more, those students will be provided transportation on a bus so that we can be sure that that is handled in a safe manner for all of those students. That would go for any of the areas that we have that have those kind of concerns around those major thoroughfares. There was one more point that I wanted to make, and it's going to come to me in just one second. Size, busing. Oh, we've had several families and principals that have asked us about the 3-year busing for programs like dual language immersion at Nibley Park. And we discussed that one this morning because the nature of a dual language immersion program is not that it just is a program through 6th grade. The program has been designed and set up to create true bilingualism in students. And that means that the intent is that students would participate in the program through 12th grade and in fact have that opportunity to earn up to 12 units of college credit while they are still in high school. So the placement and the participation in those programs really is a long-term commitment for the district and for those students. And so in looking at where we place these programs, we've also been mindful of the middle school and high school experience and what that will look like. So when we think about Nibley Park, what we want to assure those families that will be attending that program is that at the end of that 3-year period where we have said that we will provide that busing, we will look at that program specifically and determine whether or not continued busing would be something that is merited, and we would bring that conversation to you as a board for further discussion. Board Member Jensen, have I answered your question?
I appreciate it, and I think that it was critical for you to answer that 3-year question because that seems to be on a lot of people's minds.
It does. It really is. Thank you. And I should also mention that Newman Elementary School is also of a sufficient size and has enough classrooms that we would be able to conduct that dual language immersion program there as well. And of course, Edison was actually built to have that many classrooms, and we would have to do very little, even moving of teachers from classroom to classroom for that Magnet GT ELP program to be placed there if that decision is made.
I also appreciate hearing your explanation about middle school and high school because I think that that is something else that people or members of the community are concerned about is how will these programs continue on, or how will these programs be facilitated with those students as they move into middle school and high school? And
Yes,
okay.
yes. We really want that to be a robust program all the way through that high school graduation for these students.
And I also am glad to hear that, so you're telling me that you've walked through these schools and you know that there are that many rooms because we've had emails and questions as to, well, when we put this hub at Emerson, that there really wasn't enough room there because we had to put in portables and all of those things. So I have just seen emails where, you know, our families want to know that these schools, that you really do know that they have room.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Jensen. Board Member Anderson, I recognize your raising of your hand.
I'm after Christy.
But I wanted to see if Jenny or Vice President Williams had any questions right now.
Sure. My turn?
Yes.
Well, I think Christy has brought this up, at least that's what I'm thinking. But with the voices who came and spoke tonight, it seemed that there's plenty of rumor mill going on. And I feel, with the misunderstanding with the facilities, with misunderstanding with a lot of things of the process and all of this. And so my concern is I kind of wish that some of them stayed behind so we could clarify some of their questions and their concerns. That our hope, or my hope is, that you would, I don't know, maybe this committee could create some form to the 4 schools that are on the on this discussion of closing, to have these questions answered. We had, and why, we had some parents here who possibly don't speak English, right? They don't really understand your big graph that you've put on the website. Like, if we could create some more clarity and transparency for those 4 schools, so they can understand why, like, we know it, we know why they're on the list, but to clarify why they have to be on the list, so that they're not, as frustrated, because I feel like their anger and their frustration comes because they just don't understand. And so if we could create something like that to offer that to these communities, I think may hopefully provide a better, not only understanding, but maybe also a reciprocation of that we're listening. So that's all.
Thank you, Jenny. Vice President Williams.
Yeah, I may be reiterating a little bit of both what Board Member Sweat and Board Member Sika said. But there was, as we heard from various folks in the audience tonight, there was a lot of confusion or misunderstanding about processes or how decisions are being made. I think one thing that I've been hearing from various community members and even attending some of my local school community council meetings is that we've heard that parents didn't feel informed, didn't receive surveys, didn't. Some folks mentioned that they didn't get to take a vote on it, which is not the process and how this works. I just think moving forward, if the board does vote to close these schools and we talk about a transition process, we need to think a little more outside of the box and how we communicate how things are happening. I heard a lot of frustration around communication and transparency tonight. And no matter what happens, I think we need to improve on that. And I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Vice President Williams. Student Board Member Evans, do you have any questions for? I would certainly echo everything that's been said at the table, and making sure that we're communicating and discussing with parents, ongoing discussions about our rationale and what that transition process looks like is really, really important. And I would certainly echo particularly what Board Member Sweat has said about how are we going to continue to offer the resources that we offer students in these schools and families in these school neighborhood communities. It's everything from obviously attending school after school programs, if it's food assistance, if it's connections to other resources like mental health and healthcare. I know and I believe that our families, they are very concerned and they rely on these services that we do provide and support our families with. Additionally, along with what Vice President Williams said is around communication, and I'll just emphasize that again, is how do we engage our community and our families better? I know in the past we've had a lot of opportunities, whether that's department level type folks or folks within our district focused on engagement with our community. I think we really need to take a look at how we continue to bolster that up or bring some of those opportunities back for our families and as a district. We have a lot of really big things on our plate, including this, but with the potential of bonding, of potential school closure in the future, I think we really need to examine how we're working with and engaging our community. I know we have a second round of comments and questions. Board Member Sweat.
Thank you. So there's 3 things maybe just to circle back to for me. I know that our information and our reports have been riddled with misinformation and sometimes mistakes. And I would just say, let's own that. Let's own that. Let's talk about it out in public, because we kept hearing, you're not answering my questions. You're not answering my questions. So let's get to the root of that. What questions aren't we answering? What things still need to be corrected? Let's look at that and find out What are some of those things? Because the frustration level seemed very high tonight with that specific question. The capital plans, I agree with everybody else that the process we need to probably change, because a snapshot provides a look of maybe inequities, but that is not, I don't believe, the way that we've tried to run that capital plan. But it also isn't something that we talk about in open meeting, of how those capital projects are determined and how we look at them and what goes into that. So I would just say, I'm going to echo what everyone else has said, is for us to look at the processes that we have around how we spend money, because I think that means a lot to me when there's not an accusatory tone. I think it's more of just not knowing what the process is of how monies are dispensed throughout our district. And then last, I think that, this board has certainly heard me say this. I appreciate that Jennifer Newell, our mayor's liaison, is still here. That, 1 out of 3, I kept track, 1 out of 3 speakers tonight talked about how our city is becoming a city of apartments and retail shops. And that the spaces that we have are not being done with parks or thinking of families, of saying, here, let's put amenities where our families can get to them. And I have to own that. I think that as a partner with the city, we need to demand that our master plans are thinking about our families and being child-friendly. When over and over again tonight, we heard Salt Lake City is not family-friendly, it's not child-friendly. We have to own part of that. And so I would just say, let's really think about how we partner with the city and the developments that are being imposed on the city or onto the school district through RDAs, that we are really thinking about what does that look for our families. I know I can just speak from my own area in Sugar House, that the development that's gone into Sugar House is definitely apartments and retail shops on the bottom, and they're not geared towards families. And so it hurts me to hear that. I've lived in this city for a long time. All of you are products of this city also, and I think that we need to change that narrative.
Thank you, Board Member Spott.
Part of your question. If we do not send enough students from elementary to create a middle school program, then we also don't have enough students leaving middle school to come to high school. So, for instance, the program at Newman, the preponderance of those students will go to Northwest, so we'll work with Northwest and their faculty to make sure when those students arrive that we're ready there to begin to support a DLI program, and then that will move to West, where we have previously had a DLI program. It did not have enough students that were coming into it to sustain it, but we believe that with a robust program that could send as many as 40 to 50 students a year to middle school, and hopefully another 30 to 40, I'm just thinking of general attrition from what we've seen across the state at this, that we would be able to maintain very solid groups of students in a DLI program. The same thing with Nibley Park. We, of course, are having multiple discussions about Nibley Park as a 7-8 school, but the other piece to that is that it is also in the Hillside Middle School feeder pattern. So if we decided that we were going to move the DLI program there, and then it could feed to one of our programs at Highland, where there is a real push to support students who are heritage speakers of Spanish or who have acquired Spanish through a DLI program, or to East. So that will give us opportunities for all of our students to go through a middle school program and then to a high school program. The questions about what do we do if it is too small, or, this feels a little like a Goldilocks question, right? In my perfect world, this is going to be just right. But what if it's too small? What if it's too big? I'm going to talk about both of the programs a little separately because there are a few differentiations with the way that could be handled. What happens if we build a program for magnet, gifted, and talented, and we don't have enough students in the program? Generally speaking, magnet and gifted talented programs will include about 3 to 5% of a school district. Looking at the number of elementary school students that we have, that's roughly 270 to about 400 students. Those are very rough numbers. But if we look at our middle numbers, the middle numbers identified and accepting placements, because it is a choice to participate in a magnet program, and we know that there are families every year whose students are offered a placement that decide to stay with their neighborhood school, because as we've heard tonight, neighborhood schools are very important to the identity of neighborhoods and families. But were we to place all of those students, or even 85 to 90% of those students in magnet placements, we should have a just right fit. We have historically, and the board will remember, had opportunities where the number of students identified, maybe particularly in a grade level. You'll remember several years ago, we had a very large number of kindergarten students identified. Coming into first, second, third grade, we ran an additional section of a class for that. We have also had recently, in this board's memory, the opportunity to look at our upper elementary or upper house identification that we do at the end of third grade. And we had more third graders identified for placement into a fourth grade program than we had room for, and so we are piloting a program at Washington. I think what we see here is that the district has committed to providing services for students that are identified and accept a placement in a Magnet GT program, and we have been flexible and creative in the way that we have always made sure that there has been enough room to provide those services in the best way that we can. Those services have been made more difficult with one of our programs being connected to a DLI program, because if a student is identified later in elementary school, we couldn't place them in a DLI program because of the language component that needed to go through with that. So having three, I don't want to say open access because it's a placed program, but having three programs that are English only will hopefully enable us to really be able to balance those programs. And if not, we'll come to the board and say, what a wonderful problem we have. We need to talk to you about expanding one of our programs. If they are too small, and we have had conversations about this, because there is always with change going to be some, maybe perhaps, either, it's my Goldilocks problem, too many or too few as we balance. And I would like to encourage, as I've encouraged Mr. Kearsley many times, to have faith in this process and make sure, and I'll encourage the board, that as we move through a change process, that we realize that our first year out, we won't necessarily reach our balancing number. And I'd like us to be able to look at those over a couple of years and really see that we have placed these in carefully considered places in schools where the neighborhood program will be able to welcome these special programs and will be able to make positive contributions to all of the areas of our district. When we look at dual language immersion, again, the Goldilocks problem, I'd like to think that every one of these classrooms right out the gate is going to be 24 students. One of the concerns, or not a concern, but one of the structural issues that we have right now at Emerson is that because of the small number of students in that program, we have classrooms that are being taught half a day in Spanish and half a day in English, but by the same teacher. And that's not necessarily the best instructional model. We really like to be able to have teachers focus in on their specialty areas. For instance, one person focusing in on the language arts for 2 classrooms and another teacher really focusing in on the math and being able to flip those. But we know that it works to do it that way. So as we balance those programs again, we'll be looking at our enrollment and determining, whether we are running a 2-teacher model or we are sharing that classroom with 1 teacher as we build that program up, especially again at Nibley Park is the one that we would be moving and transitioning that Magnet GT program out over the next 6 years, then we would be hopefully filling behind that with a robust neighborhood program that would give us that two-teacher model all the way through at least 4th grade, which is what the state recommends. And if it stays very robust, we're very happy to keep it at 2 teachers all the way through 6th grade.
That's very helpful. And I would just clarify for anyone listening, still listening, that as we make this decision, as Dr. Grant has indicated, the board is being asked to vote on potential long-term closures and also potential boundary changes, but that in our policy, there's a distinction between optional programs at a school level and placed programs that are decisions made by Dr. Hall's office. So this is an opportunity where I'm asking questions that I'm hearing from the community and getting really good feedback, but it's not a decision that we per se would make, for clarity.
Thank you, yes.
Board Member Jensen.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, and maybe this would be directed to Business Administrator Kearsley. One of the things that I heard this evening quite often, and again have seen it, I mean, I really have tried to look at all of these emails that we are receiving, and I am wondering how well the public understands educational funding. And I guess I'm just thinking of it from my perspective. I have learned a lot since I have joined this Salt Lake City School Board. And I think from what I heard this evening, where we need to be working with the governor and with the legislature and city councils and being lobbyists for education, I think that many of us are doing that. I think that we are attending joint legislative committee meetings. We are participating in the Utah School Board Association and are doing what is available for us to, I guess you would say, lobby for the Salt Lake City School District, which was the term the public was using frequently this evening. Maybe it would be helpful somewhere if we could explain how funding flows from the state, how it flows from, our taxes and that sort of thing, because a lot of this is we're restricted by how this process works, and I think it might be helpful for them to understand how that works. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so school funding is a long, drawn-out discussion, and I would recommend, over the next several months, we'll be developing the budget for the 24-25 school year, and we'll get into more detail on that. But I just want to quickly say, the school district gets funding from really 3 main sources: federal government, state government, and then local property taxes. And only one of those, and it really is a portion of the property taxes that this board can control the levy. Everything else is controlled by outside forces. Largely from the state, it's known as the WPU, or weighted pupil unit, where we receive per student funding. And those rates are determined by the state legislature each year of what that per student funding is. And then we have to, make do with what that is, addressing all of our expenses and needs. Again, as we go through the budget process over the next several months, we'll get into a lot more depth and detail where our revenue sources are coming from and what their intended uses for as well.
Okay, I think that's beneficial for the public to understand. And as you just said, I mean, this can be complicated as well. So if there is a way for them to understand that weighted pupil and all of that in a basic or straightforward manner, I think it would be helpful for them so that join forces with us. Please start contacting the governor, contact the legislature, participate in your city government and their strength in numbers, I guess is what I'm thinking. And I think that that would be helpful for them to understand what our boundaries are. And okay, the next one that I had was like Board Member Sweat said, and I think Board Member Anderson and Board Member Williams, I think we have acknowledged that there have been challenges with this process and questions about the process and how the information wasn't being communicated clearly or discrepancies were surfacing. I hope that we're noting these so that in the future, one of the individuals this evening said, okay, when we do this again, please don't let this happen the way that it's happened. And I recognize it's been 20 years since this has been done. And I think that people here, there's a learning curve and had to figure out how to go through this process. I'm just anxious to ensure that as we hear these comments that we're creating some sort of a file or a working tool to help us in the future avoid some of the pitfalls that we've experienced.
Thank you, Board Member Jensen. Board Member Sika or Vice President Williams? Any further questions or comments? Student Board Member Evans? All right, so I did want to read a statement. As you all know, Board Member Bate is participating remotely, and due to the connection and his system has froze, but he did want to weigh in, and he sent me a message that I'll make sure to share with Alan so it's part of the public record as well. So this is from Mohammed, not me. I want to extend a sincere thanks to everyone that took time and came to share their thoughts. We are faced with unprecedented challenges that so many school districts are facing across the country. Please know that I hear you and feel your pain and frustration. I'm not here to sugarcoat the challenges communities and neighborhoods feel when a school building is closed. A building might close, but it will not close the unity that binds that community or our community together. I think without any further comments, I would also like to extend my gratitudes to the board, to members of the community, to the superintendent, Business Administrator Kearsley, the cabinet, everybody who came and spoke this evening from all areas of our community and city, even folks who don't necessarily have a school that their students attend on this list that's been recommended to the board. We had folks from elected officials, from various departments in city government, and parents and kids. I just want to thank you all for joining us, for sharing your thoughts and your feedback with us. I want to thank you for your patience. And please continue to reach out to us. Please continue to study and examine the information that we have available on the website. And please continue to reach out to the board as we continue and work throughout this process over the next month or so. With that, pursuant to our administrative procedures, the board must determine whether it will place the recommended options on the action agenda for the upcoming January 9th, 2024 board meeting. So I'm looking for some indication from board members as to whether they are supportive of moving forward in that manner.
Are you asking us to move this, or are you just asking for general?
Just general. Head nod, a thumbs up.
Salazar, I support.
Do you want to put this on the
January 9th agenda?
on the January 9th?
I think we do need to proceed with this. This is the process that was followed pursuant to board policy, and I think that we need to move forward.
Superintendent Grant, with that determination acknowledged, we will be placing this on the action agenda at the January 9th, 2024 board meeting, and Vice President Williams and I will make sure to fulfill that.
Christy thought it.
Commitment.
So are you saying that you're moving it,
It'll be placed on the action agenda.
it'll be placed on the action agenda?
That's pursuant to our APs from our policy. That concludes the discussion portion of the agenda. Now it's time for the report section. Superintendent, report if needed.
Then we have an action item.
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. I'm moving ahead. Thank you for that. Okay, we do have an action agenda item. As you all know, this is in reference to case number 24-023. I'd like to remind board members that given the nature of this action item, we will not have any discussion of this item, but I will entertain a motion to approve the Safe School memo.
You need it on the action agenda?
Yes.
This is a motion to approve.
Oh, it's on there.
Action.
Yeah, there was a request from a board member to remove item number 5 from our consent agenda to the action agenda.
So it's on action.
So it's on action.
Yes.
I move to approve.
Could you be a little more specific about the Safe Schools case number 24-023?
I move to approve Safe Schools case number 24023. To approve.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second.
Motion to table.
We have a subsidiary motion to table this agenda item. It does require a second.
I will second that motion.
All right. Now that there is a second to the subsidiary motion, it is my understanding that we would have to vote on the table first. Is that correct, parliamentarian?
Yes. First vote required, 5 people.
We will take, and that is also non-debatable, board, so I will start with a roll call vote with Board Member Anderson.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, no. Brian?
Brian Jensen, yes.
Christy Sweat, no.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Jenny Sika, no.
All right, that motion does not, or that motion, let's see, let me get my numbers, sorry. It's actually a tiebreaker.
Well, it's
But it's
Mohammed.
2/3.
We've got Mohammed online.
Oh, did he vote?
No, not yet. Okay, I just got a text from Mohammed. Mohammed votes yes.
All right, well, that motion does carry, so it is tabled. We will revisit this at a later time.
President Salazar, may I ask a point of clarification?
Of course.
So you asked just a few minutes ago about the January 9th meeting and placing the recommendations for school closure and boundary on our action agenda. So I would just like to speak to that for a minute.
Please.
Is that okay?
Of course.
Because, you know, we received the list of schools and all the information on the 20th, and most of us, you know, didn't have very much time between then. And that night, I felt very inadequate to ask a lot of questions because we had just received that report and also the schools. So between then and now, knowing that we had a public hearing tonight, that was my focus, was to come and to really participate and listen to the parents and students and community members that wanted to speak to us tonight about it. For me personally, I would like to see another discussion agenda, which still gives us the ability to move it to action that night. But I think that would just be my preference. I don't know if other board members feel that way, and I'm fine if the majority of the board just wants it to be on the action agenda without a discussion. But I just wanted to voice that I felt like I needed to have another opportunity to have a discussion with our board. And then, at that point, if there's a motion to move it to action, then to take action that night. But that would be my preference.
I understand that. Board Member Sweat, thank you. And I think what, the superintendent and board leadership were trying to convey today is that in our administrative procedures associated with the policy for school, permanent school closure and boundary realignment, it'd be under letter D, number 3. If after discussing the recommended options, the board determines to take action on a proposed boundary change, the final recommended options for boundary changes will be placed on the action agenda for the next public board meeting. And so we were really just trying to make sure that we covered all of our bases with our administrative procedures and our policy to make sure that we have that opportunity. Use a full minute. Are there other board members that want to weigh in on Board Member Sweat's sentiments?
Could you just clarify, if it's on the action agenda, obviously we still all have the opportunity to discuss it.
We do.
So would the time just be more limited if it's on?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no.
Because we've agreed to place it on the action agenda, does that preclude us from also having a discussion item? I would be supportive of that if it doesn't make a substantive difference, but it also gives us more time.
We can accommodate that for sure. Board Member Sweat, does that satisfy your
I'm sorry.
your preference?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now that we've concluded our action agenda item and the point of personal privilege from Board Member Sweat, we'll move on to the superintendent's report if needed.
Just wanted to compliment 22 of our remarkable teachers who have picked up a STEM endorsement, which is an extra piece of work to be endorsed in one of the STEM fields. So want to acknowledge that appreciation for that, and thank the state board for providing a $1,500 stipend to those educators. And way to go, Salt Lake District, to have 22 more teachers endorsed in that field. I also want to thank our partnership with the Wasatch Mountain Institute. They're one of our science partners, and sixth graders at 9 elementary schools were able to participate in some field ecology sessions with those partners because of that work that they do that way in collaboration with our schools. So thank you to the Wasatch Mountain Institute. I also want to acknowledge that we've got 9 schools that had some group of students who were underperforming in ways that made that identified the schools for some targeted supports and interventions. And those 9 schools worked hard to serve those students in their schools, and because of that, we're able to move out of that targeted support and improvement. So just want to recognize how much effort that takes to be attending to student learning that way. So want to give a shout out to Edison, North Star, Mountain View, Indian Hills, Nibley Park, Riley, Whittier, Clayton, and Glendale for their work around serving students to get out of that. Targeted support means that some student growth, a great deal of student growth has occurred over a number of years.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board member reports?
Do you have a report?
Do you have a board member report?
Sorry, we do, but we're talking about it, sorry.
Do you have a board member report?
You go
Board
down
member
to
Seco?
that end first and then come to this end.
Okay. Thank you. Vice President Williams? Student Board Member Evans? Board Member Anderson? Board Member Jensen?
my
Board
time
Member
to
Sweat?
the duo.
Okay, I
gonna be
I
like
guess
a
what we're
joint.
doing, we're tag teaming here. Okay. I have spoken to you in the past about JLC, and I just think that it's really important that we support that, especially in light of what we were hearing this evening, and that the public understands that this is a committee that meets well throughout the year, but it also is at the Capitol when the legislature is in session every Friday. And I think that it's really important for us to participate in that. But Board Member Sweat.
I think that one of the things that we have recognized, and I so appreciate the people who have been involved with our Joint Legislative Committee over the years, you know, Nate and Bryce, Mohammed, Jenny, Ashley, and Brian have all contributed, and so has Alan, and our superintendent is getting a first look at everything. One of the things that we have prided ourselves, I think, with the Joint Legislative Committee is that we want a united voice. And I think it's important that we have a united voice with UASBO, which is our business administrators, with our Superintendent's Association, and also as school board members. One of the missions of JLC is to provide information to us, to have a good debate, and then once we come to, a decision, that we support that as a majority. Because of the limited funds that we have in public education, we have put the preponderance of the lobbying for those priorities on the USBA officers and our executive director for the Superintendent's Association. And what Brian and I would like to do is just to remind you that there will be a joint legislative committee that is going to be in January. We are assuming that it's going to be heated and that there's going to be a number of things that are going to be brought up. And I am hoping that as a delegation from Salt Lake City, that we'll be able to have that good debate, but then also once the decision's made, that we stay with that united voice. We think that that's really important, to continue to do that for public schools. I think that our superintendent and our business administrator would probably be able to speak to that, also about how important it is that we are all on the same page. So that's our joint legislative thing, to remind you that there will be a meeting at the conference, and I think it's at 3:00 on Thursday afternoon.
And that's why we're bringing it up now, because we will not have another opportunity to tell you, please put that in your schedule.
Yeah.
I think it would be very
It
beneficial.
will be a
for
very
our
crowded
district.
room, so come, you might be sitting, I think it starts at 3, right? Is
Say
that
the date
right?
one more time, please.
Yeah, I think it's 3:00. It's that Thursday, which is,
What is that? Is that January?
is that the 5th of January? It is the 4th.
Okay.
The 4th of January.
Yeah, 4th of January.
And then our programming, of course, starts that night at 7. But I think it'll be important for us to be there and to listen to the conversation. The last thing that I just wanted to bring up is you've heard me talk about the Council of Urban Boards of Education that NSBA supports. And I think that tonight, especially as I listen to a lot of our parents talk about how important it is to be in touch with the urban issues that our families are going through. This is just, I think you all know how important professional development is. We are involved with it on the NSBA level with our annual conference, but also our USBA conference. This is just another layer. And Superintendent, I would love to provide any more information to you that if we look at becoming a CUBE district, that we would then also automatically become a NatCon district, a National Connections District, because they go hand in hand. But I think that for the future of this board and looking at what kind of professional development you would look at, and with the changing demographic of our city, that an urban-specific conference would be of benefit to this board. And so that's something that we can pass more information on to you, Superintendent, and to Business Administrator Kearsley, and then maybe talk about it in a future meeting, to see if it might be something we'd be interested in doing.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sweat and Board Member Jensen. And it does remind me that we did make a commitment as an LEA part of USBA to participate in JLC's Capital Day on the Hill. So we do have a commitment as a board to be participating in these ventures of lobbying.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. With that, I don't necessarily have a board member report, but I do want to thank Principal Jared Wright and his staff for accommodating us this evening here at West High School. This East High guy is going to say go Panthers. Thank you, Jared, for that. We really appreciate the accommodations you've made for us. I also want to thank Isaac Astil and your team for setting up the stage and working with Jared and his team to make sure that we had an opportunity to hear from as many community members as possible this evening. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I call the meeting adjourned.
So that's my car.
How do I get there?
Oh, I might walk to your car, you can ride in my car, I can tell you where it's at.
I can do that. Okay, believe me,
Okay. I was going to pick it up.